Welcome back to Hot Chips, everybody. This is the HOTTCHIPZZ Hot Take, and today we've got a spicy one for you. This is our reaction to the new GGG interview regarding POE 2's new league launch reception, hosted by yours truly, one of the best, Zizaran. Strap yourselves in, folks. This one is going to be spicy.
So, hopefully not. But yeah, I'm ready to start. I'll do just like a quick intro and then we go. But yeah. Thank you so much for joining me here for a podcast after the launch of Point 2. This is Jonathan and Neon, for those that don't know, directors of GGG. And yeah, we're here to talk about the launch.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's always good to have a chat. Obviously it's a bit of a contentious launch in some ways this time, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about that. But, it's always good to have a chat.
Yeah.
Okay, let's stop right here. He says contentious. Listen, look at the look on this guy's face right now. Paused. Right up here. Jonathan looks defeated already. I mean, bro, before I even started the video, it fucking like 0.001 second in, this guy looked defeated. Jonathan looks defeated. Mark over there looks optimistic. Oh, this is going to be interesting.
No, I do have a lot of questions, so I think we'll just get right into it.
Sure.
A lot of people are pretty unhappy with the current state of the game, especially like our relative power to the monsters earlier on. And obviously we are finding some builds that are feeling okay and that are stronger, but I'm asking, are the slower and more challenging builds the intended pace of the game?
Well, I don't know that. Once again, I mean, we get this question a lot, right? Of just the what is the pace of the game supposed to be? And I honestly find it hard to answer that because of the way that there isn't really an obvious way to even quantify that, given that players have so many different abilities. What I will make all I can say is that if people are unhappy, then we will keep on improving things until they're not unhappy anymore. Because ultimately we want to get the smooth progression where, you start the game, you feel weak, you get stronger, you get stronger, you get stronger, you keep on feeling stronger and stronger. And you have to have that progression where you're feeling more and more powerful as you're going through. So if you're not feeling that, then that means there's something that we have to improve and get better. So it really comes down to okay, if you're talking about a weaker build, well, what build is it? And then we'll be looking into that and seeing what we can do to improve it. We just have to go through these things one at a time.
So I think right now the problem is that it's almost every build this week for a lot of archetypes, and that it's more it's definitely in the minority that people are like, oh, I found something that works. So it's almost like the reverse there. And I guess I'm curious, what amount of time are you expecting people to take going through the entire campaign, or on your own test run, or when you're doing test runs, how long do you take on a first campaign run?
That's a solid question. I can't wait to hear what he says to this.
I actually haven't measured that on the current version, and it isn't.
Wait. You haven't measured that on the current version, Jonathan? Oh my god.
Doesn't necessarily always work that way. The number of times I play through the full, and when I say campaign here, I'm talking about 6 acts, not just 3.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the amount of time, doing that, I might only do that that full run 2 or 3 times in total as we're developing a class.
Yeah.
Much more often I'm either testing this part or I'm testing that part or whatever. And I honestly am not sure exactly what amount of time that's taking. But as I said, I don't know that the time. The thing is, the presupposition with this question is that that we have a goal in mind for the amount of time for the campaign, and the implication of that is that the campaign itself is not fun. But it's if that's the implication, then we just want to make that fun, right? It's the.
Okay, now I will say this, dude. I think the campaign is a blast. I think I've played through it. I want to say 5 different times, working on a 6 now between the launch and the current league, and I don't mind the campaign at all. I mean, that's just me, but
campaign should be fun to play. The amount of time it takes, to me, is not nearly as relevant as just make it fun, right? If you aren't having fun, we want to make sure that it is. So that's why, when we're okay, people are saying we don't like the Act 3 areas, make those shorter. It's well, what amount of I don't think that quantifying that in an amount of time is the right way to look at it. It's like, here are some areas that are unfun. I'll make those areas fun, and then whatever the duration of time that takes will not be bothering you, and that may result in the areas becoming shorter. But making it shorter is not like it isn't a time metric that we are looking at to determine whether or not the game is good. It's, is the game good fun to play? So like that I guess is kind of the way that I would look at things, and that's, I think, what puts us a little bit, like, when it comes to communication with the community.
And I will say that, excuse me, I think the game is fun to play. I think the game is a blast.
Like, people will have their opinion about what they think is the reason that the game isn't fun, and they might be right or they might not be right or whatever, but at the end of the day, what we're looking at is just like, okay, you're obviously having a bad time, we want to fix that. So we're going to look at, like, here, like, so what we'll do is we'll be like, okay, so you're saying Act 3 isn't good, we'll look at Act 3, we'll look at the reasons why it might be bad, we'll fix those reasons, and then that may or may not reduce the time. Or in this case, it definitely will. Like, it's shortened it by a lot. But to me, it's like, the frustrating thing is when you go down a dead end and you're like, okay, like, this is bad, or and then, like, you have to respawn, or then the area doesn't like, the area despawns and you're like, you have to do things again, that kind of stuff, right? That's the stuff that people don't like to do. And so that's where we sort of look at. And so then when it coming back to builds again, once again, it's like, okay, if you're not having fun with your build, then that is a problem. We'll fix that. But it's not like there's a correct pace for the game to be played at as such. We just need to make sure that you're enjoying yourself.
Well, I guess a follow-up to that was, I, among with many others, were not expecting a nerf to just how the campaign felt in general, right? In the last interview I heard, it really sounded like the intention was to target things at the top end. But there were so many things that nerfed us during the campaign here. And the thing I would say about that, I would like to finish.
Sure. Okay.
A lot of people are really wondering about the long.
Oh my God, bro! Ziz is grilling him. Oh, I love it. Get him, Ziz. Get him, bro. Hold him accountable, baby.
Long-term direction for the game with that in mind, because they were also not expecting that. So. A lot of people are wondering if the campaign,
to be clear,
that was going to be my question.
That was not our intention.
So
yeah, we
should be more powerful than we currently are during the campaign then.
Well, that one I will have to look at specific cases, right? Because, like, that comes down to like okay, so, like, we already did something about that, right? Where we like nerfed Monster Life, and it's possible that we'd have to nerf Monster Life again if that's still a problem. Like, that's the kind of thing that we can do. But the thing is that, like, as I said, like, the first thing we heard when everyone was saying this, the first thing we thought was like, what the hell? We didn't even nerf the campaign. Like, literally, that's what all the developers were saying. We didn't nerf this. Why is everyone saying we nerfed it? And so, like, then it's like, well, we found a few things, but, like, we're still looking for what those things are. And, like, it's not always necessarily obvious with all the changes that you make and things, because I can absolutely tell you that our goal here was nerf the end game, right? Like, nerf no, it wasn't even nerf the end game. What it was nerf the things that were trivializing the end game before you've even managed to get like your items and stuff like that, like just the really trivial easy shit. Like, that was our intention.
I mean, there was some blatant.
Finally, we hear from Mark. Mark, man, been waiting on you to chime in, brother.
Fuck ups.
Yeah.
Speaking bluntly, right? Like, the minion change was just bad.
And when you say the minion change, are you referring to the rare minions or referring to the player minions? Because those are both. Both of those were incredibly terrible.
Just fuck ups.
Yes, those were just fuck ups. And the thing is, it's so easy for shit for like that.
I gotta say, loving the honesty coming out of these guys right now, hands down.
To slip through.
Well, we have a bit of and look, a lot of it is just because there's a little bit of, like, it's early access, so we're allowed, but we are firing from the hip a lot here. And stuff like that, like, let's get it in there, let's try it out, see how people think, and if it's bad, we just undo it, right? Like, we do regress on a decent number of things in the first few days of a release, and so yeah, there are some pretty blatant fuck ups.
And you know what, guys, let me just stop it here, because I think Mark just said something very, very important. And I think it goes over a lot of people's heads and under a lot of people's feet. This is early access. Okay? You paid to effectively be a beta tester for the game before its actual release. You know, I see a lot of hate, a lot of negativity, a lot of, their review going down, and people, It's early access. There's a reason why we're in early access, and that's so they can figure shit out before they release their game. And I think as players sometimes we forget about that. And so that's all. I just wanted to touch on that there. This is early access. Stop tripping.
So yeah, that's exactly what happened with the rare minion life. It was like, why are now, I don't know why it felt this way, but 100% it was the case that the minions was, for some reasons, the rare minions were surviving longer than the rare often. And it's like, well, they don't have anywhere near as much life as the rare. And then again, once people got enough AoE and all of that, it solved it. But it was just a bad experience. There was just nothing good about that.
Right. I think there was definitely a compounding of a few factors that were like on their own relatively small. But the thing is that and this is the question that I have is that like if people are still having a bad time during the campaign, if they're starting fresh now, because bear in mind as well that people will have an experience and then we'll change the balance behind them and then they still remember that the experience was bad and they're not playing it again to know that it got better. So the thing is, if you're playing it again and still having a bad experience in the campaign, then that would be a thing where it's like, okay, well, where are the campaign nerfs actually? Like we have to find where they are, because I don't know that there's anything intentionally done there that we're sort of aware of left. And I think like that one just means that
I can give examples.
There might still be issues.
Yeah,
sure. We'll go for it.
So
what are some?
So the number one, especially to me, most oppressive thing.
He said, "Go for it." Then what is it? Oh, bro, I love how Johnny is just on the defensive, bro, like 100%. Oh my god.
Is the relative speed of monsters compared to our abilities to set things up. Like whenever you're talking...
Hang on, but that's not a thing that changed though.
No, but that's been continuously bad. It doesn't matter if it's changed or not.
Okay, sure. But so what I'm saying is that so this is an example.
I think that has changed.
But that's just an example of something that's bad. So what I'm saying is that's not a thing that changed. So like, if you're talking about like, is it your intention to nerf the campaign?
But we are weaker now, right? A lot of skills.
But if you're saying that's bad, I mean that's a different question, right?
A lot of skills are weaker now, right?
Dude, this guy is fucking... Jonathan is swinging for the fences right now, brother. Hot coffee, like, psh, like fucking everywhere, bro. This is getting good already. We're fucking not even 10 minutes in.
Tuned down on a lot of things, and things that people are starting with weren't necessarily strong. So that relative speed of the monsters feels extra bad. Like you want us to set up these combos and stuff, right? Where we're throwing down like a cyclone and trying to do like a combo move, but the monsters are way too fast. They're rushing us. It's not even like the bosses are the main problem, right? Like if you're seeing like clips.
Yeah, so let's talk about the monster speed thing. So one of the issues that we have is that if monsters are slower than the player, then combat is optional. Like it's just 100% the case. Like you cannot if the monsters are slow.
That's fair.
Like anytime the monsters are slower than the player, then you can just run past them and they serve no, like they don't, like effectively you can just choose whether or not to engage or not. And like I don't think that kind of gameplay is good. Now there will probably be some areas like, and the thing is, a lot of the time when people talk about stuff like this, it's like there'll be a few areas that are bad. Like I know there are definitely a few areas where like too many of the monsters are fast. So the Faradin are a good example of that. Where like when you go to the last areas of Act 2, like the Faradin are just really, really fast, and there's kind of nothing slow in the area, and so that's an example where like we probably want to make some tuning.
I mean,
there.
To get more specific, like I have someone right now literally going through the areas. All areas in the campaign and listing all the areas that have a disproportionately high number of monsters that are too swarmy or too fast. Right. They're doing it literally as we speak up. And my intention after this is to go through. And so like, I mean, a good example is like the Canopy, right? Yeah, the Canopy. Sure. The monsters are real fast. And then not only that, you're in a ritual with them in a tight confined space. And it just, you end up in this kind of moving around with packs. So if you're not fast enough to kill everything, you just get absolutely swarmed.
I guess I'm
but just to continue with that though. I just want to mention that like one of the issues we run into is like people will say, oh, you know, like things should never be faster than the player and that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, if we did that, then the game would feel pretty lame. So it really is a question of like targeted changes, like finding where the worst things are and then solving that issue.
I really disagree with that. So you were saying like if the monsters are slower than the player, then combat is optional, but like it's an ARPG. We want to kill the monsters. That's where all the loot is. That's where our XP is. Like, sure, you'll have some speedrun scenarios where people are...
Now, That's a fair point too on that. This is very good.
Running past them, but usually what ends up happening is that we're running past them, bunching them up in a large bunch and killing a bunch of them, and that just feels really good. That's a core part of ARBGs for a lot of people. So I don't think that being faster than the monster is as bad as you think it is. Like, we actively want to kill monsters. That is the entire premise.
Well, I don't.
It's fucking hilarious that he even had to point that out. Oh my god, bro.
Necessarily disagree with you that gathering killing is fun, right? And you should still be able to do that. But I would, as I said, I don't think anything about the fact that some monsters are faster than the player prevents that. I don't think you can have areas where everything is slower than the player. Like, it really isn't that great. In POE 1, in the distant past, we had that problem, and it just meant that running past monsters was the thing you did all the time. And then there were some changes, like, I don't know how many years ago it was, like, what was it, 4 years or something like that? When was the Act 1 like thing? Like, we made changes where we made a lot of monsters faster than the player. And at the time, and that wasn't negatively perceived at the time, it just made the monsters feel better that we had there. So, like, you absolutely can have monsters faster than the player, and I do think it's important to have those kinds of situations.
Wait a minute. So do you see where Jonathan said, "Oh, it made the monsters feel better," but then Mark over here gave the like, what was that? Oh my god!
Like,
if you're
it just
talking
shouldn't be that it's it's just that, like, you need to make sure you're getting the balance right. And I think that that's like a running theme with PoE 2 in general, is that the target to hit is smaller. Like, because if we want the combat to be more engaging, then that means there's a smaller target that it puts more pressure on the balance to be right. And so I think that's the main issue that we're running into, is just that, like, it's okay if okay, so this is sort of a larger topic, right? But effectively, it's like, in PoE 1, there are so many tools that the knowledge ceiling is absolutely astronomical. And so you have a situation where a good player can completely dominate everything to, like, the absolute nth degree, right? Now, what that means is that you've got a scenario where the game seems like an impenetrable mountain to a new player, because, like, if you don't know what you're doing, the game is just like impossible to understand. And it's like, there's all these tools that you can use to improve yourself, but the existence of everything like that, and like having such a huge skill ceiling, means that you can just trivialize the game right at the start. And so, like, what that also means though, is that, like, if we get balance numbers wrong, like if a monster has like double life by accident in PoE 1, it like doesn't even really matter. Whereas if a monster has double life in PoE 2, it matters a lot. And so what I'm saying is that the threshold for what is right is like way tighter in PoE 2, and so that means it will just take longer to balance and get it all correct. But it really is the case, I think, that it's getting all those numbers right that kind of makes it like that will make the combat ultimately fun at the end of the day. And like, if we're doing our job correctly, then we'll still have this situation where a good player feels like they dominate and a bad player feels like they have a good time. But we won't have a situation where, if you're a good player, the combat is so trivialized that you literally never have a moment where you're in any danger or have any kind of like level of like sort of interest going on. And I think that's the worry that we have when we're looking at things, is like, if we get to the point where like a good player never has to face a single challenge ever, then I don't think that that's going to be a game that will ultimately be fun in the long term. And so that's kind of like, and like, so that is to me the reason, like, what I fear happening if we just like say, okay, we're just going to like lower everything and make it easy. And that, once again, that isn't to say that we shouldn't necessarily, like, maybe Monster Life does have to come down. Like, if we're in the wrong band, we just need to lower it, and that's fine. Like, we will get to the point where that is fun. But we'll do that by while still making sure that we have a good experience for, like, ideally for everyone, right? Like, it should be the case that is balanceable to that way. It's just a lot harder in PoE 2 context.
Well, I think a large portion want like bosses to be what is the challenging content, whereas right now it's almost the reverse, where there's so many clips of like people like dodge rolling away from like packs, right, and they're getting chased down, maybe not having a counter player, and they're like, oh my god, I'm just being chased down. So, and also I sort of disagree on the Act 1 changes in PoE 1 not being negatively received. I do remember there was quite a lot of people that really didn't like that because of what you mentioned with like the faster monsters is generally a bad thing.
Did you see the look on his face? Look at this guy. Look at the look on this guy's face right now, bro. Oh my god, bro. Oh, it looks good kill. Holy shit, bro. Oh my god, this is crazy.
So I definitely do disagree with that.
Just because I'm a like to have things to actually go and start to address. Like, can I get a gauge on what you think is like where in the game it starts to become a problem, or do you think it's like just straight out of the gate?
Straight out of the gate. Like even the second zone, like the first zone might be okay, but the second zone with the wolves, it's like pretty like instant where I don't feel like I'm getting that like ARPG playstyle.
But won't we be hurting more players than we're helping with that?
By making
won't
monsters
that
slower?
immediately make it? Yeah, won't that immediately mean that like a ton of players who actually enjoy the game because the combat is engaging immediately, like, what, doesn't it kill the game for them? Like what I'm saying is, like, it's easy to say like, oh, you make the game easier and everyone's happy, but
It is hard to make everybody happy, bro. You're never gonna please everybody. It's never going to happen. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It just doesn't matter. It's just never gonna happen. So that is a valid point. I don't think he's in the right place right now. This dude's on the defensive for sure, bro. But there is something to be said there for sure. Yeah, they just need to figure it out, and I'm sure they will.
but it isn't the case. Like, a lot of people prefer the game to like actually have some challenge in it. Like, for example, right? Okay, so here's the thing, right? So every night I go home and I play, and I like do test runs of everything, right? And it's like, if we made it so that there wasn't any challenge for me in Act 1, I wouldn't play the game anymore. And that isn't helping anyone, right? Like, I need to keep playing the game every night to actually enjoy myself. It's like, if I'm not enjoying myself, then it's like, how can I even develop the game correctly? So on some level, it's like, it has to be fun for me. And I know that if you, like, if you get to the point of having like everything just be trivial, it's like, well, okay, like, why am I even playing this anymore? So that there has to be some level of challenge. Now,
There's just a lot. I just thinking more on this specific. There's a big spectrum here. Like, for example, I know I have seen the feedback of Act 1 minus canopy and mana feel generally good on the pacing, the speed of monsters.
Right.
You feel like you can almost do no-hit runs, is like kind of what people have said. And then you get to Act 2, and it's not too bad at the very start, and then you get to the like Halani gates, and it's like, okay, now everything's gone off the reservation.
the Farah didn't have a problem.
And then you get
there's the Titan Valley as well.
I've seen a decent spectrum like that, and I 100% want to fix that. Like,
Right.
so that's why I was asking you for your example, because there's just a lot of people on the different spectrums here that want different things, and so I'm trying to understand what how much we would need to change things for the discussion with you as opposed to with other players.
Right.
So that's all I was asking there, because I do intend on slowing down those extreme zones, and I think there are like 10 of them. And I think that is at least something hopefully a lot of viewers are going to be happy to hear, which is like, okay, cool, they're going to address those. So the Dreadnought, HOTTCHIPZZ, you've got canopy. We're going to start. Those are the most egregious I'm listing. I'm not saying those are the only problematic ones.
Yeah.
And then you got areas like Titan Valley, which is just like riddled with annoying monsters that are just like out of control.
Facts, bro. Facts. That place sucks.
And you got heaps of this. We start there. We keep working backwards until we catch as much as we can. And it's going to be a lot of different changes. So one could be, okay, like, why is it that there are 6 different varieties, of which all are just, as you've, heard people mentioning, and I think I saw something that you had thing, which is they're playing POE 1, I think, which I thought was a funny comparison, which I'm like, okay, fair enough. They need to, not every monster needs to slow down, but like, for example, some of them can be fast, and maybe the answer is, okay, they should be weaker. So sure, they engage you, but they die quick. Or maybe the answer is like, there's too many of them. And then in a lot of the cases, it's going to be like, okay, here's 6 different types of packs. Well, 6 of them are fast. Well, that's a problem. 5 is fast. That's a problem. 4 are fast. That's a problem. 3 are fast. That's probably still a problem. But 2 are fast. That's probably more acceptable. So you get 2 really slow, maybe 2 fast, 2 kind of in the middle, and you get some big slow monsters, some small monsters. And that distribution isn't quite right in a lot of zones. And so that's why I asked, because I would say some zones have a nice, here are the slow monsters, and here are the fast monsters, and it's kind of cool. You get this like up and down pacing, and it can feel kind of fun, where sometimes you're on edge and sometimes you're just obliterating things. And then you get the ones where you're like, holy, I've just been zoned 3 zones in a row where I'm just on edge, getting swarmed, like, absolutely. And that creates this extreme negative feeling of like, I can't do the things that my skills want me to do. And that is bad. And that I definitely want to fix that. And
And there it is. That's, brother, that's the cat in the bag right there. At least with the new class, the Huntress, bro. I think I made it to like, I don't even think I made it to level 10, bro. It's like you want me to play fucking Street Fighter? That's the whole kit and caboodle right there. At least when it comes to the new Huntress class.
I want to fix that imminently. Like, I'm going to immediately get onto doing that. So there is a huge range of spectrum of players that want different things here.
Yeah.
And I want to at least address that thing because I know that's just bad. Like, I think that's bad for everyone. I don't think that's bad for some people. I think that's bad for, everyone. It's for a huge majority. So we can start there for sure.
But to be clear, though, like we still do need to have some monsters that are faster than player. It can't be that none are. And like things like the wolves in the second area, like if we didn't have that, then I think that you wouldn't even like. Once again, you wouldn't get the feeling of like you wouldn't.
Okay, what Jonathan needs to understand is that they are not making Path of Exile 2 for Jonathan. Jonathan, you are not making this game for yourself, brother. I'm sorry, you're not. You're making it for the millions of people that are going to buy the shit and play it. You're making it for the 1 to 400,000 concurrent players that you had at one point. Jonathan, bro, you got to stop taking shit personal, Jonathan. I love you, brother, but you got to stop taking this shit personal. Mark, you're doing a fantastic job. Jonathan, you got to lighten up, bud.
Immediately out of the gate have the game as just trivial, and like I think that really would hurt the game a lot. Like I think that would be a big problem. So it's really just a question of like, if there are parts that are frustrating, we'll address them. But like it isn't the case that just everything needs to be slower. It really would hurt.
So I think
there's another thing you.
I was just gonna say, I think there's almost like two different player bases where there are a lot of people that just want to blast and maybe have challenging bosses, and then there are people that want like the entire gameplay, every second to second moment to be like very engaging. So it's I guess like
I don't know that I don't know that I agree with that either, because I don't think it's so binary as you say. Like there is a middle ground that will work. Like I'm almost certain that there is, and the
Jonathan is not giving up, bro. He is not giving in.
The way that you get there is by just looking at the individual cases and just fixing every one of them until like the rough edges are all sawed off, all sanded off, and then and then it kind of works. And like you'll get to a point where like you just don't get frustrating experiences anymore because we've managed to sort of fix all of those cases, and that point won't be in a situation where just everything is slow. Like we really will still have a level of engagement there.
I guess the problem with everything being so fast, and part of why I pointed out like everything almost, is because it's such a heavy focus on combo gameplay right now, but it feels like the speed of the monsters are heavily incentivizing like one button builds. Like as soon as I could, I was like, the less I can do, the better everything will feel, just because I don't have time to set up combos. We're getting completely overwhelmed. That's why I pointed out everything as a bit of an issue.
Well, it isn't necessarily the case that you have to use a combo on every monster. Like, if you've got stuff that's fast, you don't use combos on that, and because it's disrupting you. But then also, it is also important that that monsters do disrupt your combos, because otherwise your gameplay just degenerates into doing like 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Like the monsters have to be able, like there has to be situations where your plans are disrupted in order to like have a situation where you can respond to things, like you actually get some counterplay on stuff like that. And so the monster designs have to reflect that on some level. But like it's always an amount, right? Like there's an amount of that you need, and there's probably too much of that going on. But you still need an amount of that, or it just becomes all flat.
We've been talking about like, look, the last few days we've been talking about some like pretty extreme considerations and things, and like, talking about the monster life is the main thing, which you could argue is player damage, right? They're obviously
monster life is the easiest way. If everything is too weak, then monster life is the way to solve it.
Oh yeah, if there's a few outliers of builds that are find the tricks to do good, then yes, it is. I bring all players up or bring all monsters down. They're the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like we have been talking about a lot of this, and like actually going like, what would we willing to do here? How would we be willing to change it? What are we willing to test? What are we willing to try? And like, there's heaps of things on the cards here. Like, kind of honestly, everything's kind of been on the cards, as long as we don't feel like at the end of the day that we've taken the teeth out of the game in terms of difficulty. Like, that is what's important to us, is making the game.
And that's totally fair. That is 100% fair. I do not want you to remove it. I do not want Diablo 5. I mean, well, hold on. As bad as I want Diablo 5, I do not want Path of Exile Diablo 4. That's what I don't want. There is a huge distinction right now between playing Diablo 4 and playing Path of Exile 2. And I prefer Path of Exile 2 any day of the fucking week. And I'm a Diablo baby, bro. Been a Diablo fan since I was fucking 13 years old, 12 years old with my first PC ever. And I'm in my 40s, okay? So that says a lot coming from me. I do not want... If I want to play Diablo 4, I will fucking play Diablo 4. I want to play Path of Exile 2. So please, I don't care how bad it gets. I don't care how much bullshit people talk. Do not take the teeth out of the game. I'm with you 100% on that.
Still have a feeling of hard being difficult, and I would say out more than just bosses. Like, it shouldn't just be that the bosses are the only thing that's difficult.
Sure.
And we certainly don't want it to devolve into what I would argue is, well, I know this is like way further away, but like, again, we're talking about changing. It could be changing anything here. The one thing I also worry about is getting to the thing where I would argue a lot of the difficulty in PoE 1 outside of a lot of the boss fights is just like you occasionally just instantaneously die to something and you're like, I don't even know what I died to. And a lot of that is where you get like, it isn't necessarily from monsters being too hard, and it is often from just like spam and too much stuff going on combined with like daemons and volatiles and all of that. So making sure we avoid that as well. But it does mean in the sense that then you kind of get that, like, okay, you have to have it be that you're engaging with the monsters for it to be difficult. Which kind of means monsters do need to actually pose a threat, and you need to be able to see what they're doing and react to what they're doing. Now, I wouldn't say that's universally perfect, but that's an argument for, like, not wanting to get it to the point where it's too much of that, just like, well, I guess that's an argument for de-swarming things, as you said, which I agree with, by the way. That is like an important thing, because it is kind of getting towards that, and that contributes towards where things are slow and stuff. But I wouldn't personally argue that every zone feels swarmy. I think there's a swarmy argument I 100% want to focus on solving first, and then there's like a certain things are fast and certain things are slow, and maybe there's that. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure where I was going with that, but I just want to, I guess it's more just giving my sense of where I want to make sure we don't end up is in that place, just to make sure, and we want to be real careful about not getting to that point. So I would actually say we're probably a bit too far there in a lot of the areas, but I don't think it is a universal problem right now.
I think also, especially, even though warrior is, or May skills are particularly strong now due to being able to use a shield, but it can feel very bad that like every damage node, like, has a downside, whereas isn't really the case for the other builds, where like with maces, it's like, yeah, you get 40% increased damage, but 5% reduced attack speed. And reduced attack speed, especially with all these combos, can feel particularly bad compared to others. I would say like maces are kind of good right now, but a lot of that is a shield.
I actually do think there is a bit too much of the... I actually like a little bit of, like, maybe a cluster or two having the kind of upside downside, but it's honestly something we've... Aside, obviously keystones have upside downside, but yes, there's true that probably there's kind of too many passives, especially in the warrior section, that are a little bit too giving downsides, where it was something, honestly, that's a bit experimental to PoE 2. Like, we didn't have that in PoE 1, and we were like, let's give it a go, and maybe we went a little bit overboard with it in that part of the tree, but I don't hate it as a concept. I think it's just that it's a little bit too saturated there. I will agree with you there 100%. Yeah. I would say, as people hopefully would know, we're going to iterate on that passive tree a million times, so it'll find its sweet spot for sure, and it's definitely not there yet.
I do think it's important, though, that, like, keystones can be felt. And so,
well, we're not talking keystone.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say keystone. I was saying the notables can be felt. And so part of the reason for the upside downside thing is that, like, it lets you do a larger damage bonus because it's got the downside, and therefore you're going to really feel that damage bonus.
No, they are good. So, like, I think it's the frequency of them in that part of the tree.
But I'm saying that you can find another way maybe to do that. But it's like, I do think that like having that feeling of like I really felt that node is something that we like that is a thing that you do get. That
that is important in our passive tree philosophy. Yes, is that the before and after of taking a notable, especially the first. Obviously, nodes become less valuable as you get higher.
I will say this about these two guys that, like, especially Jonathan. I love how much they love their game. Like, you can tell. Like, these guys live, breathe, eat, sleep, shit, fucking Path of Exile 2. Even in Jonathan's, like, super defensive mode, it's like he's taking it so personal, it's coming out of his pores, it's all over his face. But it's still, like, I love that because I know this guy loves his game, right? Like, so I do love how much these guys love their game. I just wanted to say that.
Higher level because they're just saturating into a bunch of diminishing return. Well, not diminishing returns, but more like, the 500 to 520% increase is going to matter less than the 0 to 20 and whatnot. But especially for the first chunk of the game, we want it to be that every notable is felt. Like, I definitely now can feel the difference. And I would say, a lot don't hit that mark. Some do, some don't. But we've been trying new things there. So,
bit
of a pivot.
Yeah. So the next question, I want to talk a little bit about the fact that you have only done like the crazy large changes between seasons. And you talked a little bit about that. You felt forced to treat the game like it was released. Are you still happy with doing only large balance changes between patches? Or is that something you would maybe revisit with something like every 2 weeks, especially with like a warning period? Like, changes are coming in 4 days.
It's hard. I don't think that you can just nerf people in the middle of a league no matter what. Like, we get highly punished for that. Look, I mean, people are going to be unhappy about nerfs whenever we do them, as we can see. But like, it is actually.
I think he's right there. I think if anything, you could learn what happened when Blizzard did that their first couple of seasons in, and they never did it again, bro. When we found broken shit, they let us play with the broken shit. They didn't come in and fucking kill everybody's joy and everybody's fun. So I do think that's very important. I think I agree with Jonathan 110% here.
Actually, strictly worse if you get nerfed while you're playing the game. Now we're in a position now where, because things like are probably possibly undertuned, that we can just do mid-league buffs, and so that means you'll see way more patch changes happening now, because like it's okay to do major buffs during the middle of a league,
which we're
just can't do. Which we're doing now.
I generated a relatively large list yesterday. Which I know we have that whole philosophical discussion earlier about player power. Well, like, there are many builds, many skills that are underneath, because obviously otherwise I wouldn't be have spent a good chunk of the day going through and assessing what needs to be increased, right? So like, I don't want it to take as like I don't want people to take away from that as being like no, we're happy with the current balance. Like, obviously not. We're still going to make changes. We're still going through everything and we'll get to that sweet spot for sure. But like,
I mean, it's going to end up feeling like a season of buffs this time. And the reason why it'll feel that way is because like the medicine has gone down now. Now we can start on all of the actual, like all of the positive buff parts. And so it's like,
the medicine has gone down now. Now, where have I heard that one before? Good old Rod Ferguson.
Last season we just weren't even in a situation where we could even do that, right? Because it's like you already had
we genuinely tried to. We genuinely tried to. We had this plan of like, bring all the top end outliers down and then make sure everything is feeling good in the middle. And we started with the bringing outliers down. And then all of a sudden, and this is why the patch notes were so late, we were like, oh no, like we're like running out of time here. Like, we thought we could get through more of the balance and start bringing more things up. We didn't get to do all that we had hoped to do. But like, by that point, it's kind of too late. And so like, we're going in, and then now our idea here is like, we thought we were, like literally up until the last minute, we're like, okay, we're going to keep going. Right, let's start buffing. Let's look at weak things. And like, it just ended up being too time consuming. And so the answer here is now, though, it's like, well, let's just keep going. And so obviously the first few days is really like looking at all the player feedback and going, what are the biggest problems, right? And this is where you get the Act 3 changes, you get the minion builds, you get the big things. And we are trying to address all of that. And I understand just game-wide balance is a big thing. But now it's just going to be like, all right, this skill, this skill, this skill, this skill, this skill, this skill, this skill. Like, let's go. What are we changing? What are we changing? What are we changing? Going through literally every single one on every single skill tree and every single reservation. And then we're going to go, okay, well, you've still got Blood Mage and Acolyte of Chiola sitting there at 0%, 0.1% played. Okay, well, clearly not doing well enough. Let's target that and just go on and we're just going to keep iterating.
All right, guys, I think for time's sake, we're going to have to kind of speed this up. So I'm going to speed the video up a little bit. And as long as it's still understandable, I think we'll be all right. Because this is going to take forever.
Iterating through until we can get as far as we can. And maybe we catch everything, maybe we don't. But like the intention is to not stop just because the release day happened. Like we had a goal, we didn't achieve that goal. And so we just need to keep going.
And do you have like a rough idea? Like you were saying you were working on a lot of things to be buffed. Do you have a rough idea on how early we could be seeing those already?
Well, we'll be seeing them continuously. Like okay, so this was
2 days.
Yeah.
Okay,
This was a funny thing because okay, like so like one of the things I think that was majorly misinterpreted that things we were working on post was like this was the things we were working on that day. Like literally that was that day's worth of work that we were talking about. And then the next day it's like, well, now we're doing this Act 3 stuff. And like today we'll be doing a bunch of other stuff. And like you know what I'm saying? It's like every day we're going to be like continuing to iterate.
Okay, I think the 1.25 or whatever we got it at 1.5. I think the 1.5 is good, guys.
And do stuff. It's like so the idea that someone's like, oh, they're not even acknowledging this thing. It's like, well, come on, we've literally had like that was one work day. You know, like there's more stuff coming, right? Like
which we need to be more clear about.
Sure.
We'll try to be more specific about that. But yes,
I mean the one that I found the most funny with that is it's like I'm like, okay, we're going to look into all this Act 3 stuff, but in the meantime we'll just add some checkpoints. And it's like the reason I put that in there is because like that's literally a thing we already noticed was bad. And it's like it's not like hurting anyone to add some more. So it's like the idea that we're like, oh, we're just going to solve the whole thing by adding checkpoints was like ridiculous. Like obviously that wasn't the case. It was just like here's just the thing that I can just tell someone, hey, go do this while I'm looking at this. You know, and so they did that, and so then that'll go in the next version. But you know, like it's like then it's like the next like 4 hours after that, I'm like.
And that's another point too, dude. People just need to calm the fuck down. Like it's early access. These guys can't do everything at one time. They don't have a magic wand, so let them do their thing. Like. I get what he's saying about the checkpoint. It was a band-aid. They put it on. It's not the ultimate end goal. Like, come on.
Like sitting there going through areas and trying to work out what's like what needs to improve about them.
Yeah, so checkpoints is kind of something I want to talk about with the large zones and stuff. And you made a post yesterday talking about that several Act 3 zones would be reduced in size. But as a core idea, is Path of Exile 2 being aimed more at like doing one long playthrough and finishing up one character rather than do like 5 to 10 characters and the people that are playing thousands of hours per year?
I mean, that's once again, it's not like I'm not targeting one or the other. Like your second, I mean, like if you're doing multiple playthroughs, the game is a lot faster just due to the like items and stuff that you have. Like that is definitely the case. You know, like
a big thing that's missing.
Making multiple characters in a league is certainly something that I expect and want you to be able to do.
Well, a big thing that's missing comparatively to POE 1 is our ability to speed ourselves up, right, on our second characters. In POE 1, you have things like 7 step and stuff like that, and at least so far we don't have that many alternatives for that, and our movement abilities are completely different, no Quicksilver, so even though like we can kill the bosses faster, but since the zones are so large, we can't get like the same amount of speed on our second and third character onwards that we would be expecting in POE 1.
Well, is the zone largeness issue like I mean, Act 3 was the one I would say that was like pretty obvious as far as like things like that go. But if it comes to other zones, it's just a question of what are those zones and which are the issues. And like also the other thing is that like generally speaking, like once you know how the zone works, there are ways then to like to know what you're looking for and sort of how to go places and what to do. So to the extent that isn't the case, that's why like when we're looking at that's why when we're looking at Act 3, it's not just make this zone smaller. It's like what's actually the reason why a player who is experienced is not able to find the thing that they're looking for, right? And that's where we come to like, oh, there's this whole area over here that you could just walk down and you have no idea whether or not that's important or not. And so then you end up doing that and it just wastes a bunch of your time. But like the intention is to make it so that like if you know what you're doing, then you know where to go and like you don't have a problem with that. So like that's why a lot of the changes in Act 3 are just like, okay, yeah, like you randomly get bad luck and then the Chimera wetland has the stupid Y fork thing in it and like takes ages to go one way or the other. It's like you get rid of all of that stuff and then the zones won't feel so large because like you'll know where you're going and you know how to get, you know, it kind of works out that way.
I do know the layouts, though, and they are very large, even with knowing the layouts, just because our movement speed is like relatively slow. Like even like Matlin Waterways, before they're getting reworked, hopefully the rework makes them a lot slower, but I know exactly where I'm going. I'm not like backtracking into the wrong area, making it longer. So it's just a lot of these zones are very long.
Like I understand that area is a challenging one, and it's hard for us to actually fix like trivially because just the way that the level generation works there's not an easy like. It's not like okay, like other areas we can change the layouts very easily because like of the way that our generation works, but that area has a very fixed type of layout, and so it's going to take more effort, which is why it was on the list because I didn't have an immediate like thing I could do that day to sort that one out. But like I understand that that's an area of concern for people. But like once again, it's like that's a specific area, and I wouldn't say that like that the issues that area has would apply to the whole game. You know, like that's just an area, a specific one for that particular.
So is speeding the player up an option? Like is that something you'd be willing to consider?
Well, it sort of depends on how it was done. like we've discussed some things in that area like before. I'm not necessarily against that, but it would have to be done in a way that didn't compromise the combat and compromise like the like it shouldn't be the case that you because this is the issue with this, right? Is that speeding up the player is if you speed up the player to the point where they're once again faster, then always faster than the monsters, then you get back to the like combat doesn't work anymore, like your combat is optional kind of like situation again. So like we would have to find a way to do that wasn't going to like break that as well. So there might be something we can do there, and we've kind of been discussing that. Because I'm not exactly wanting to subject people to like running when they're not doing anything, right? But it's just a question of finding a way to do that that's not going to.
It's hard to say anything specific because like there's a little bit of like the moment we say a specific solution, people might hold us accountable to that in a degree. And
like we haven't tried it yet, so we can't.
We have been talking about it. We do have some options we want to try. We just don't want to talk about them before we try them.
Right. Okay.
But like yes, I agree. Now you mentioned one other thing there, just because I don't want to gloss over things too much, which is you mentioned the Twink unique problem. Which is 7 league steps. There are many more items in POE 1 that you can use to streamline the efficiency on reroll. That is still very deficient. Yes, it will come in time, I assure you. It's just a matter of we did higher level uniques this time. Obviously, they're not going to have low level item requirements. Maybe next time there's a more even split. I don't know. We just need to keep going with the uniques, and we'll eventually get there. We do have some designs that achieve specifically the low level high movement speed boots. We do have that as a thing that I definitely already have designed. I think it's just waiting on the art, and then it's going to go in. But yeah, there's going to be a lot more of those coming over time as well. Like that will solve itself in due time for sure. And
but is there, like the question is, okay, so is for damage, the twinking situation is not bad right now, right?
It's not as damage. It's not as bad. Again, you can kill stuff fast.
It's the movement speed specifically that we're.
And the fact that we don't have movement abilities, like in the same way, like there's only so much speed you get with shield charge. Like if I'm doing like a 3rd or 4th character, I can definitely get enough damage, right? It's rough on my 1st character,
but you don't
at least
have to use movement abilities as the solution to this. And I would prefer that wasn't the solution because then you end up with a kind of like pretty lame sort of gameplay thing going on. Like there's going to be a better way to improve that without having movement ability as a solution.
We have some things on the cards. We just need to test them out and try them and be able to actually have a good argument as to why they work, why they are good, and we convince ourselves, damn, we should have done this before, or they're bad, and we're like, here's why they're bad, and we can explain what we tried and why it's bad. But yeah, again, we're always a bit on discussing what those will be because yes, again, they're being held accountable. People get their hopes up for it, and then we have to say it doesn't work. So like, there's a little bit of like, let us just try these things, and then we'll see what we come up with, and we'll tell people at the moment that we have it. But again, it's not a piece of it certainly is something that's come up, and it will come up every single repeat of the league, and so it's not like off our radar by any means.
Okay, that's good. So obviously a bit of a different question, but on console, debuffs have the option to be at the bottom of the screen. Could that be a toggleable option for PC? Just can be rough to like move your eyes.
It wasn't on my radar. We might be able to do something.
We have a full buff UI rework going on at some point soon. It was planned for earlier, where like so this can be part of the consideration, I guess. But yeah, our UX guy is currently working on. It has it on top 5 of his list, kind of thing of things that we're going to do.
I don't care about the UI. I don't have a problem with the UI. Fuck that, man. Yeah, that needs to be. I don't care for that, bro. Like, I don't have a problem with the UI, bro.
Just do to improve the system.
That wasn't to do with moving them, but we can add that to the list of things that we might.
I mean, it's the whole they can go behind the boss's life bars and all that problem. And hopefully, if it's good enough as well, we can port that to POE 1 because it's a more egregious problem there for sure.
Yeah. The next question is about in POE 1 we have a lot of player agency over how we solve early problems. Like the skill tree has a lot of temporary fixes for a build early on, where if your gear isn't up to scratch, you can get 30 to like strength dex int, you can get leech, you can get resists, even like specific ones like fire, cold, lightning, etc. You can get very easy access to fixing mana and stuff like that. And a lot of things that are like temporary fixes that you later on fix with gear. And the crafting bench also helps a lot more with that in POE 1. And I know runes are meant to be the solution here.
Give us the crafting bench, bro. Fuck.
But we don't really get enough sockets early on. We don't get enough gear early on. And we then don't have any way at all to really fix this.
So why is it that you're not getting enough sockets early on?
Well, that they're just not dropping. Even if you're checking the vendor, like I'm checking the vendor every time I level up. I'm disenchanting everything. I still don't get enough because the game is very difficult right now. So you try to keep getting gear upgrades. There's not enough loot. There's a lot of people complaining about not enough drops.
I don't get the same experience of not getting enough socketables personally. Like I would say that probably 80% of the gear I'll be wearing pretty much through the whole campaign would have.
Here he goes again, taking it personal.
Sockets like in there. So like if that's the case, then like there must be something I'm not understanding about like why that people feeling that way, because that's just like a totally different experience than what I see when I'm playing myself.
Yeah, I mean, I would love
the intention.
Sorry, go on.
The intention is that you use socketables to fix those problems, and it is fundamentally identical to the crafting bench as far as the resultant like ability to fix issues on your character. Like there's nothing about the crafting bench that really changes anything that way, other than it's being less intuitive to use for new players.
Well, it is a lot stronger.
Well, there's the power. Yeah, there is the power.
Well, okay, so sure, there's the power, but like then that's a different question again, right? Like if you're talking about fixing problems, then that just comes down to the values on the mods.
Okay. Listen, I don't have a problem with the runes. Don't have a problem with it at all. But it is not a crafting bench. It is not the crafting bench for POE 1. Does not even come close. Does not even belong in the same sentence. Okay? Give us the fucking crafting bench, bro. Stop the fucking bullshit.
And like what those should be.
Which aren't necessarily right.
Right, but the thing is that it's supposed to be that you're getting enough sockets to be able to do that. And I mean, I don't buy stuff from the vendors. Just as a qualifying thing, I don't buy socketables from the vendors and do that thing. I know people do that, and that's not a thing that I'm doing. I mean, I might do it like if I've got like a stack of 9 shards and I'm like, okay, I want a socket right now. I might like do that, but generally speaking, that's not what I'm doing. So like, there's clearly some disconnect here as far as like what the amount of loot that you're getting versus what I'm seeing, I suppose. So like, I guess I just need to understand why. Like, why does it feel so different?
It might be it might have a relatively high swinginess or something that we need to find a way, like adding more like I know something that was suggested was adding more Artificer's Orbs to fixed quest rewards through the game to minimize the RNG outcome.
Right.
Because we added those quite late. We didn't end up putting them in the...
So that's something that we could definitely do, which would mean you just get more of them during campaign, and I'd be totally open to that. Like, that's totally reasonable.
A second thing I'd like to do soon is explore... I mean, sort of unrelated, but is that, well, casters don't have their weapon crafting bench.
And we do need to... We have to add sockets to caster weapons. That needs to come as well.
Now, there is one slight concern that I have seen echoed in a decent bit of feedback, which is that the runes are... which is mitigated with more Artificer's Orbs for sure, but the runes are creating a bit of a sense of making it like the thing that the POE 1 sockets created, which is like replacing items becoming slightly harder.
Yep.
So there's a little bit of just making sure we're careful about that as well. But being able to have more Artificer's Orbs and thus socket more gear will mitigate that, so that when you get your upgrade, you're able to add a socket to it.
But I would say that it's definitely the hard-coded drops that would be the thing that, because if it's not happening to everyone, then it is a thing that will, that would be better off solving that way.
But yeah, the caster weapons getting rune sockets and obviously runes for them, and adding more deterministic Artificer's Orbs to the campaign is certainly 2 things on my immediate radar to help at least mitigate some of this. I might do a quick review on the power pass of the runes as well. I just don't want them to be too much about giving damage, but it might be a lot of the more utility and defensive ones are just on the weak side, and those can certainly come up immediately.
Well, the problem that you have, once again, is that, like, so I sort of mentioned this earlier, but if the tools that you have are too powerful, then the people who know to use them are benefited to a larger degree compared to people who don't, and what you're doing there is then you end up in a situation where content will, be like, it's just a new player goes into this and it's like, well, I didn't know about this, and then like you get screwed over. And so like things like even nodes on the passive tree can be this way, where it's like, okay, well, you had to know to pick this, and if you didn't know to do that, then you're screwed, right? Like that's the kind of thing that's like a bit of a problem. And so that we just have to be really careful about that. And like that's actually one of the reasons, by the way, why lesser runes exist, because if you knew to put a lightning damage rune in your weapon, then you would just like completely like ridiculous compared to anyone who didn't know that. And so it's like you've got like, it shouldn't be that just a single, like there's a tool like that which you just with knowledge alone, it's like you're completely like you're completely overpowered compared to other people. So you just have to be really careful with that stuff.
Well,
it's important. It's just it's just important to make sure that the solutions are very front facing, because that passive tree stuff, in POE 1, sure, I agreed, and it seems obvious to a bunch of people, but then also there's 2 problems going on there in the POE 1, which is it adds to a sense of complexity, because it's like, here are the things you must know before you start playing to have a good time. And I know that's one small piece of that puzzle, or that problem. And the second thing is, looking at POE 1 from that crafting bench, is that the crafting bench is in your hideout and not in any town, which I agree is a downside. Ideally, it would be more in your face. And so like a lot of people just forget to use it and forget that it exists. And that is a thing where, like, again, if you know, and you have a good time, and if you don't know, you don't know, and you're like, they're suffering. So whatever the solutions end up being, we definitely need to make sure are like very front-facing in your face, and are like, here's clearly the very intuitive way to solve these problems. So that's just an important piece of like philosophy we need to make sure we maintain.
A lot of that can be solved through quests, though, right? You can have an NPC early giving one of those like runes and even telling you like, hey, chuck this in your weapon for more damage if you're using a bow.
Surely, if the runes are there to solve problems, then ideally we're not telling you exactly which one to use, right? Because it should be dependent on what your problem is. But we do need to make sure that people have got enough Artificer's Orbs to make sure they can do that. That's the main thing that I would say.
Yeah, but you were talking about the problem that you're rewarded for knowledge, which I don't think necessarily is a bad thing. I think that is a good thing.
No, you 100% should be rewarded for knowledge. The question is, was the degree of the reward? Because if it is as high as like the point where, just knowing this like doubles your DPS, then like that means that like the way it means that the balance has to be like, surely like monsters would have to be harder if that was the case. And so it's like, I don't think that can be something that like we don't want to have to make the monsters harder. So therefore, like we have to just be a little bit careful about that.
There's a fine line there for sure. Right. But there's some improvements around here to be made, and there's some good takeaways from that anyway, right? Like when the determinism for sure. And I think it's also a matter of like, okay, I think there is a guaranteed rune from Ogden Village. Maybe that's too late. We should be doing that like earlier, or having more of them. Again, more of that deterministic outcomes, but also maybe knowing that you're going to get that in advance would be helpful. I don't think we quite have that displayed. So it's like some of those like the world map icons where you go and get a specific reward it's not necessarily explaining to the user what they're going to get, and so they might just be like, it's just another one of those. I don't need another tier 4 skill gem, but they don't. That's because maybe they think it's that. So bit of information improvements, and a bit of just like some power adjustments, some more determinism, especially with Artificer's Orbs. I actually 100% agree with that. I think if we hadn't have added that system so late into the development, we would have actually put that more throughout 100% anyway. So we should just do it now. But yeah, well.
Well,
100% some improvements there.
another thing I'm curious about then, I asked about the skill tree. Do you feel like the skill tree gives a good, or does a good enough job of doing temporary solutions right now that you can later up gear, or like, is that something you'd be open to looking at?
Well, our core philosophy there was that the gear should give you base stats and the tree should multiply them, which makes the tree implicitly worse at then solving the problem. So the intention there is that, now whether or not, I would say we haven't really rediscussed it since then. I still believe that's a great thing to have.
There aren't the other thing that, just as a side note, is that there aren't runes that give you attributes, right?
Correct.
And so that means that you can't solve attribute requirements with runes, which is something that I brought up a bit ago, but like we didn't have time to look at what the implications of that were.
My sole fear with that is that it means that it is even harder now to replace an item with another item.
That is the concern.
Yeah, it is. That's why like something like 30 dex, 30 strength, etc. was obviously very nice in PoE 1. And it does feel a little bit like, oof, I wish I didn't have to take that, but that gives you like incentive to fix that through gear later. And obviously we have so much resist on skill tree in PoE 1 too. I remember like, because the first time I played PoE 2, we didn't know anything about the skill tree and stuff like that. And I remember thinking I was in like Act 2 somewhere, and I hadn't pre-planned my day. I hadn't like looked at the data mines or anything like that. So I was like, okay, let's go look at the skill tree where the resists are, because I'm like 10%, 15% on the different res, so I'll pick up 15 on the skill tree. And there was just like that one in like warrior left start, and I was very surprised with that. So like, what's the reason for not having that much resist on the tree?
Because once again, as Mark said, the tree is the theory of it is that the tree enhances what your items are doing in order to make the But I mean, look,
You know, that's good to know because I never looked at it like that. Like, I never looked at the passive skill tree as a way to enhance what I already had going on. Like, that just opened my brain so much to how to utilize that damn thing now. Fuck, man.
there's something to think about again. Like
Yeah,
there might be something to that we should be considering.
Yeah.
Like
we'll 100% go have a discussion about this afterwards for sure. I certainly have a whole bunch of thoughts on this real quick, and I definitely want to go over it and just reevaluate this, because we did make a lot of these philosophical decisions, right? Where like tree should multiply, obviously aside from attributes, and gear should give the base, and like, you know, because an alternate solution might just be that the resistances given by the runes are like way too low as well, right? Like that's certainly, because if you think of like the tree for one on obviously PoE 1, and you combine that with the crafting bench in PoE 1, like the amount of resistances you're getting there, even from the lowest tier crafts and the tree, is enough to certainly be able to solve any problem. So there's a little bit of just like making sure we don't want to make it too trivial. Well,
the other thing as well is that the monsters are balanced, assuming a different amount of resistance than they were in PoE 1. So that like changes things a little bit as well. You know, like the expectation is not that you have like high resistances through the game necessarily. Like the expectation is that the expectation is that you should be able to get through from merely overcoming the negative resistances you get from going through the acts. Like if you're at 0%, you should be like that should be enough, and then any improvement you have over that is supposed to be just like something that's making your character better. But if the monster life or monster damage is not calibrated correctly, then it won't feel that way to the player. But like that was kind of like balancing around 0 was like another idea that we had to try and make it so that you always knew the amount of resistances you were supposed to have. Like being that like if the number is red, you need more, and if the number is not red, then you have enough. Like that was kind of the theory in order to make it more obvious. What people are supposed to do there.
The other thing about the tree that can be a bit tricky here is that when you have that problem, like you probably have that problem immediately where you're like, oh, I'm dying to all this fire damage. I don't do this boss. I don't have enough fire resistance. The answer can't be like, okay, I need to look at my tree and get some fire resist, because that's too late, right? Like you need to solve this problem more immediately. Right. So having a more immediate solution is ideally what it would be. So ideally there you'd be like, okay, I'm going to swap this item for this item, or maybe put this rune in, and now I might have another go and have a good time. Where if the answer is like, okay, there's resistance nodes over here, I just need to get 6 more levels so I can get them to then go and fight the boss. Like, I understand there's a level of like, obviously they're good at forward-thinking problem solving, but like when you're like in the moment, you're like, damn, I'm struggling right now. What am I going to do right now? It needs to be a more immediate solution. And that's where the passive tree solves it in one regard, but doesn't solve it in another regard. And it's important that, yes, the runes are there to solve that problem, and certain items are there. And sure, it's easy. It is not necessarily incorrect to say that those tools aren't as readily available as they should be.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think part of it is that we're definitely not dropping enough gear. Like the state of my gear, it's quite rough. Like a lot of the things I've found throughout the campaign ends up being 1 or 2 stat items, if that.
But isn't that just but this is the thing I would say about that is like, okay, when you're saying your gear isn't good enough, you're also just saying the monsters are too powerful. Like it can just be the monsters. Like I don't think that it needs like there's an element here of like you might just be conditioned to wearing rares in every slot all the time, which doesn't have to be the case.
Well,
like the gear power is entirely relative to monster power. So if you're saying your gear isn't good enough, it doesn't have to be the gear needs to get better. It can just be that the monsters are too hard.
Sure, if you're talking about also like damage and like I said speed, but okay, can you give me an idea then? When do you think
one of the things that PoE 2 has gotten us is that you're not just saturating on rares like halfway through Act 1 anymore. Like you actually do, and what that actually means is that you have situations where you change from a rare to a magic. In some cases, you're like changing around your gear through the campaign, and it results in way more like gear upgrades as you go through the campaign. Like there's way more often because you'll downgrade to a blue, but then you'll find a regal and you'll upgrade it, and then you'll add some more mods and so on. And like the amount of gear changes that are happening through the campaign is very very high. And so if we just drop more gear, then we would lose out on that. And whereas if we lower monster power, then you're improving the like you don't need we wouldn't need to do that. Once again, it doesn't necessarily say that the gear is in exactly the right place, but what I am saying is that like it isn't just buff items. Like it is a question of player power relative to monster power.
But the thing is, like, we aren't switching out gear a lot, though. I think a lot of us feel like we're like finally finding, let's say, like a glove with 60 life and 15 fire, and then we end up keeping that all the way until maps because we aren't really finding anything else. We have very little currency to craft with and stuff. And a lot of people also reported finding like a large chunk of the majority of their currency in Act 1, where maybe people find as much as like 3 to 10 exalts in Act 1, and then find 0 in Act 2 and 3. So it seems like very early heavy.
I can't really explain why that would happen because like the gear, like the way that loot drops doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the number of magic and rare monsters that exist. And so over time, the amount of loot you get increases through the game just because the number of rare and magic monsters increases. And due to the way the currency drops work in PoE 2, the more of those you get, the more rare currency you'll get, which means that like it just feels like you get more currency. So like that isn't a phenomenon that I understand for sure. Like you should be getting more currency as you go through the acts for sure. Like that is as far as I understand.
Several times I've been joking about making new characters to farm currency, and a lot of people like said they agreed. So
thankfully, we can relatively easily, if we need to, pretty much after this, add some logging for that and go and see what's actually happening. But
that is unusual. Like I can't explain why that would be the case.
I concur. There isn't. It shouldn't work that way. It shouldn't be that way. So if that is the case, which isn't necessarily true, but it could be, we're never going to rule out any bug or unintended thing where we can get some logging for that relatively fast and just check the data and actually see what's happening.
But I also do want to understand why some people feel like they get a lot of currency and others don't. Like I just don't understand what can be the responsible for that. Because like, you know, it's like I wouldn't say that every time I want 6 mods I can get them, but I would say that I'm using exalts like all through the campaign. I'm using regals all through the campaign. I'm like rolling like from whites to rares like pretty continuously.
I will say this, man. For my personal playthroughs, bro, I get way more exalts than regals. Like way more exalts than regals, and it definitely feels like I should be getting more regals, but I don't.
As you're going through, so like there's something odd about that I need to understand.
Yeah, I mean, even like I would say myself, I got very like few regals and stuff to use. Like definitely was not on the rich end during the campaign.
Well, how many is a few?
I'd say through the campaign I dropped probably 4 regals.
Hang on, but we're not talking about dropping only, we're talking about disenchanting too, right?
So because of crafting being so RNG, I will generally have opted in. I've tried both, obviously, between like disenchanting, but I find that I benefit more from gambling than from actually trying to crafting. My experience with crafting is picking up every blue, looking for one stat, regaling, and then that missing, and the item not being usable. So if
you're not disenchanting rares, then you certainly won't get a lot of regals. Like
sure, I've tried both.
Right. Well, I can't say much as to that, but like that is the reason you don't have regals if you know, like that is where like the primary source of regals through the campaign would be disenchanting. Like that isn't to say that gambling isn't better, maybe it is, but you know, like that it does explain that.
See, and man, look, I'll be the first to tell you, dude, I sell all my shit. 90% of the gear and shit, like I'll start disenchanting, but only once I'm up to a certain amount of gold. Right, so like my playthroughs during the campaign, most of the time, at least the first one through, I'm not disenchanting shit. I'm selling it. Right? Because I like to be able to buy shit from vendors when I look at them. So maybe I should turn that around as well.
That particular one currency item, at least.
It's also quite a few alchemies and stuff as well.
Yeah, alchemies are kind of not really intended to be that common anymore because the intended way to go through to rare is more via regaling. So like alchemies are like relative, like the alchemies are the kind of like, oh, awesome, I got an alchemy. That's like a kind of that's the uncommon thing that you do occasionally, not the like kind of common workaday crafting you're doing all the time. So like yeah, it should be that the regals are the primary source of crafted rares.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, the good benefit here is we have so many players right now that we can just get some data and get some analytics very quickly about what this actually is.
Yeah.
And you might find that it's just very sensitive to, you know, there's always just going to be a portion of unlucky players and a portion of lucky players. Like I definitely know that there's a lot of swinginess, of course, and that can happen. And again, that it might just be that. And I know you've probably played more than most, so arguably you should have the the most amount of data from a purely anecdotal perspective. So you know, you probably have the best average going on, the most accurate average, I should say. But that being said, like we have the capacity to look into this very quickly, and we can do so probably even today and figure out what's going on and whether or not it meets our expectations. So
the next thing I want to ask you about is the ailment thresholds. You have like how easy it is for the player to be stunned, player to be frozen and stuff. And I'd say that feels a little bit overly punishing when we don't have as many solutions or tools, right? So we have one charm slot, and it is quite difficult to get a second or third. And that's competing for freeze immune, stun immune, poison immune, ignite immune, and chaos immune. Chaos resist and bleed. Now I would say poison, ignite, and bleed from the monsters don't actually do that much right now. But if it did, like this would be a very, very heavily competed for, like singular solution to doing anything with that. So, and as an addendum to the question, I wonder, would you consider letting belts get more implicit charm slots based on item level? So like maybe at like 50 plus, they have 2, and at 81, they get 3.
That's the way it should be, right there, hands down. I agree with you, Ziz, 100%.
probably will increase the number of charm slots. Like that's something that we like kind of were intending to do and never got to yet. But I don't think that the ailment threshold was in the right place before. Like, effectively, ailments didn't exist before we changed that. So like we needed something that was going to actually cause them to happen. Like, you know, during the campaign before we got frozen like 3 times the whole campaign, it kind of was a bit silly.
Do you know, we didn't actually universally double the stunning. I know you mentioned that just to clear.
It was ailments that changed.
They stun you more as things get higher level. The expected amount of stun threshold you should have goes up. So it's not, but it's pretty minimal throughout the entire campaign. But what we also increased is the you gain a bunch of stun threshold when you get light stun, so you have way lower probability of getting stun locked. But then I would also point out, like, some of those charms just suck because it doesn't even mitigate the stun that stunned you, and that is just something that we initially did, and then we need to change this, and then it just got lost in the weeds. So like, the other thing is changing those. And I know the resistance ones work this way as well. Like, those just need to also cancel out the thing that caused it. Or mitigate the thing that caused it, and those where some do and some don't, so that needs to change 100%. And then yes, we need more slots. I think we're actually going to support up to 6 slots. That isn't to say that everyone will trivially have 6, but there is UI for it.
6 is only 6 is a thing you might be able to do with uniques and stuff like that. It's not something that you get.
But it was certainly our expectation or intention, I should say, that we give out more slots so that people are running more. Like 1 is not what you should be running. Like 2 certainly at high end minimum, and like probably 3 and like sometimes 4 wouldn't be unreasonable.
Okay, but it's interesting that even the ailment threshold change we made has not really affected most of the ailments that you just said. Like, you just were saying that, like, you know, that bleed, poison and stuff are not really doing much yet, and it's like, like that wasn't even, like, even halving that number apparently wasn't enough to make those be a thing that you need to care about. Like, only frozen is the one that really kind of changed, I think, and like for the most part you actually noticed. The stun thing is separate, it's not part of the ailment threshold change.
Yeah, I mean, but if they did do a lot of damage, that'd be very overwhelming right now, and things we can deal with.
Well, but I mean, yeah, like, it's not like we want it to be overwhelming.
It's a bit of a different game,
right?
Like, when you get the mod and modifiers and map mods and everything involved.
Sure. But you know, it does need to happen sometimes in order for it to actually be something that's worth mitigating. So now we just need to look at the actual, the charm stuff as well.
Yeah.
And do you think the implicit will be tied to item level at all? So it'll be something that you don't necessarily have to do a crazy investment or path on the tree?
I don't know what the answer to that is. I have to think about how we want to introduce that. Like, that is one way. I mean, there might be other ways. I just have to look at that.
The other thing is, like, charm. There's a level of, like, reviewing charms in general is just how, you know, aside from how many you have and not just their implicit, like their base value, there's also just, like, I'd say a lot of the modifiers on them are just absolutely, like, nonsense. Like, recover 4 mana when it procs. It's like, okay, thanks. That's not a useful thing to happen. So there's a bunch of affixes there we just need to make better as well, and we may as well probably do that at the same time, unless of course it makes it take longer, in which we'd rather just get out the number of charms first. So
yeah. In POE 1 we have masteries. I'm a huge fan of those, especially for temporary solutions. Is that something you're open to bringing back in POE 2?
I'm not a huge fan of them because they ended up devaluing the notables a lot. Like, the notables became really bland when masteries were introduced, and it's like, and it also means that, like, where you are on the tree didn't matter as much either, which, like, kind of wasn't amazing. So I think that we, like, prefer to have it be a situation where the notables are more interesting. I do think that in POE 2 the notables are very interesting. Like, it's something that, like, I think that is notably good. So
more work to do there.
Yeah, but there is more work to do. But I don't love the way that the masteries kind of like blandified the notables, and so I think we can. That's probably. I think I prefer it.
I didn't think that. I didn't think they blandified anything, if that's even a word, Jonathan. I didn't think that. I thought they were cool.
Just, putting the power in the notables rather than the masteries.
But I don't feel like they're directly competing at each other, right? You can still have, like, really interesting masteries and notables. Like, those notables can still be super interesting.
I mean, there's only so many stats that can exist, but I mean, look, fundamentally everything competes with every other thing because of the way that, like, you know, due to mod dilution. So, like, you have to, you know, you have to budget that in some level. Otherwise you just get a situation where you've got so many effects on your character that, like, everything, like, no one thing matters at all. So, like, that's, you know, just...
I'm a bit more torn about this one personally, because I do agree there are downsides, but on the other hand, the one that added it to POE 1, so, like, I'm a little bit like...
Well, I don't think it was obvious at the time what downside that would have. I mean, that was certainly not something that I would be against.
There's also just, like, the passive tree is, like, overwhelmingly complicated to people, and so having this extra layer on it was probably my biggest thing of, like, oh no, we made the thing that scares people the most more scary, because there's this extra layer that they have to, an extra keyword they have to know about, and that was my main thing of, like, maybe we should just simplify the thing that is, like, the scariest thing. Like, that was a big argument to me, which, but there are, you know, there's intermediary grounds there as well, but yeah, there's, like, downsides to it for sure. Like, I agree. There's also maybe a way to make them work. I don't know.
But I mean, what's the goal of it, right? Like, if the goal is to give you temporary solutions, then we don't necessarily have to solve it there. We could just solve it in a different place, and then it wouldn't be necessarily something
that is also true.
That's going to give you the downsides that we see that those ones having.
It's also just as a player, it is just very fun. Like, I absolutely enjoy it. Definitely, I can tell you, it does not make me feel like notables are devalued. I was even more exciting because you get it when you get the notable.
It's hard to identify that in the moment because, like, you don't notice the lack of something, like, you don't notice the lack of something, what something could have been in the same way that you notice, you know, like, the thing that's in front of you that you're enjoying. You know what I mean? Like it's harder to appreciate the fact that the notables are less cool in PoE 1.
Sure.
Because you're not thinking about that. You're thinking, I want the
I mean, you can at least rest assured that we're going to think about why they were important and what we could do to solve them, whether it be that means or another. Like,
Yeah.
The good thing about these is all of the things almost everything you bring up is going to result in some sort of multi-hour discussion between us over the next week. So,
That's good.
well,
Well,
which is the huge benefit of these things for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, thank you for doing it. But the next one's something I care a lot about, especially as a hardcore player. Defenses seem very undertuned compared to offense, and just like anecdotally, if the two options, right, if we look at it in a bit of hyperbole, where I get to watch like tankiness be out of hand or offense be out of hand, so like literally somebody walking up to the boss and one-shotting it, or looking at somebody standing there be immortal, right? I always think like if one should be out of hand, it's more interesting when the defensive one is out of hand. You still get to see the boss abilities and stuff like that. It seems so much easier always, and I think most patches have been like this, where it's always easier to scale offense rather than...
Bro, Jonathan looks so miserable, bro. Jonathan, it's okay, bro. It's gonna be okay.
defense, and I wonder a little bit how you feel about that.
Well, you're not wrong that often the best defense is stacking all of the damage.
Yeah.
I mean, we've suffered from this for a long while. It is ultimately a consequence of just having the game be, like, again, talking about the hip firing and things be a bit unregulated with respect to the levels of uniques and builds and stuff going everywhere and hard to think of it all. And like, but it is generally true that we have more offensive. I guess people find damage in general to be more fun as an investment avenue.
That is the real thing, is that most people would prefer to invest in offense generally.
I agree with that.
Mostly the case.
But then shouldn't defense be even more encouraged then for the people that want to? Because even as a hardcore player, I almost feel like it's the opposite. Like anecdotally, for example, for point one, and full disclosure, I have not been able to get to Arbiter yet, right? We're very early in the league, so I don't know if you made them do less damage. But in point one, other people were doing some testing, and I asked softcore players to try a little bit, and there were people that were getting one-shot by Arbiter moves with 15k life, some that are like kind of hard. So as a hardcore player, what I felt like then, I was like, well, and since I can't really tank, like there are multiple moves here that I can tank, not just like one big telegraph one-shot, but there are multiple here that I can tank. So what I did to prepare instead was I went in with so much damage that I just one-shot the boss, which is a little bit deflating for me. I would say Arbiter was one of the least fun bosses, whereas I would way rather go in and be so tanky that I can make a few mistakes, and then end up leaving.
It's quite
I agree with that 100%.
hard to split the difference between being tanky and being immortal. Like, surprisingly hard to get that right. And when I say that, it's because you can regenerate life very quickly. And so if you don't die, like, okay, and the other thing as well is that boss abilities that do those big hits take a long time, right? And like the bosses often can't hit you again immediately afterwards. It's like they'll do their big ability, and it's not like it's going to just immediately follow up with something that's going to chip you down either. So
Yeah,
like,
but
if
we
you
can't
fail,
tank them.
no, but what I'm getting towards is that if you don't have something that's going to do a lot of damage at the for those big hits, like, we just have to be very careful, because like if like, let's say that one of those big hits did only, like, you know, a third of your life, you know, something like that. I don't think that then the boss would ever be able to kill you ever, because it would have to effectively be able to do three of those, like, of those things before you can regenerate them. So what you're really asking for, and this is something we discussed a lot in the past, by the way, what you're asking for is for a more attrition-based gameplay style, like a more MMO style like thing.
So yeah,
and what you're really saying then is that you want flasks to do way less regeneration, and you want regeneration to be controlled way more in general, and then have a more attrition-based gameplay style. And that kind of just isn't a PoE way of doing things. Now, like, I mean, that could be a thing we could change to. Like, that would be an option that we would have, but it would be like, it would be the balance change of the universe to do something like that. Like, it would be a complete redesign of all the damage and like bosses and like the whole way everything works. Like change to more attrition style would just be like a you know, an apocalyptic level of balance change compared to what we have, for sure.
I mean, I'm not 100% sure I agree with that. And I was going to ask, do you think the goal of a difficult boss should be to kill the player or to deny the player the loot?
I don't understand what that means.
So when you're leaning more towards attrition-based gameplay, right, you're recognizing as a player that you've entered a fight that you're maybe not fully ready for, you're maybe getting the boss to 30%, you're not able to finish it, and you're like, I have to leave this fight, I'm not strong enough. As opposed to punching the player with death, you're already just taking away the loot anyway. There's not an XP loss anyway at the moment.
I mean, I guess we're not thinking in those terms at all. Like, we're just like, but okay, sure, you're talking, okay, like, so okay, so that question, I would say, only makes sense in an attrition-based gameplay context, which is not what we have.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it kind of means that like the boss doing abilities to be able to the boss trying to win is, or like, and trying to kill you versus denying you the loot isn't a different circumstance unless there's attrition, which we don't have. So
Okay, I'm not following this. What the fuck is the difference, bro? If you don't beat the boss, you don't get the loot. So what are we talking about? The difference between the boss killing you and the boss denying you the loot? Like, what the fuck are we even talking about right now? I had to have missed something, guys. I don't...
like, you know, it's so what I'm saying. So what are you not agreeing with then?
Well, I think you do have attrition-based combat on a lot of bosses, right? Because there are many of the like campaign bosses that don't necessarily have one-shots. But even just on like as a Viper, as an example, right? I was having a like quite long fight because I wasn't particularly powerful at Viper. So I think I had to reset 7 times without it killing me, but 7 times before I was able to actually kill Viper on my build because I was running out of flasks. And you don't have a good way to regen them during the fight.
So I'm not when I'm talking about attrition gameplay, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about attrition in the sense that your life pool is something that goes down over long periods of time rather than something that moves around.
Well, it effectively is through the flask, right?
Well, yes.
I was no longer able to recover.
So yes, to the extent that we have attrition-based gameplay, the attrition is through the flask. You are correct. Like attrition via flask is what we have. What I'm saying though there. Well, okay, sure.
Oh, you got him stomped, Ziz.
Well, fair enough. Like, yeah, the flasks do give you the attrition, and so therefore
The campaign is quite attritioned.
It's just
that
way,
the kind of cap comes off, so to speak, at the end game, where like it can be very It's certainly the case with a concept like Leech, that the moment that a boss can't one-shot you at all, which...
Well, okay, like if you removed all sources of flask charge gain out, like that you could do in a boss fight, then you could probably reduce the size of the big monster hits.
Well, just to check real quick as well, just because we're specifically talking about Arbiter, there's kind of a few things going on. Like, it is the intention that the skills, and which happens in the game and POE 1 as well, and like some people might argue it's some sort of bad design or not. I kind of like it. There are other skills that are more like your personal agility or dexterity based, and you have to avoid them, and that's like, stand in the elder donuts and the the dancers and the like move into the lanes and the bullet hells-esque things, where it's like that's not really your character as much. Like, are you thinking those are fine, or are whether or not they're exactly tuned in this context, like in terms of timing, but are you okay with the idea that those kill you and you don't get to make, like, whether or not they could be more lenient is a different question, but like, are you okay with those killing you and kind of your defenses don't really matter? Like, are those the problem? Is what I'm just trying to understand exactly what skills are a problem.
Yeah, so for the Arbiter, I feel like there are multiple, right? You have the corridor move. That was pretty much always a one-shot, right? And sometimes, obviously, like you were saying, that wasn't like the main topic, but things spawn almost too far away. I remember seeing a clip of like Quinn running slightly in the wrong direction, and then he sees the corridors the other way, and he's like, oh, it's over for me. You have the Arbiter move, where he does like the fake-out meteor, where he starts like firing the beam into it and stuff. I guess the way, like, as a player, I would want defense to be is the more I invest into defense, the larger my room for error should be, which is where I'm feeling there's a big disjoint now, right? Where it just isn't. And then I'm entirely incentivized to go full offense, because I'm still having enough defense that those mid-range hits and small hits, they're still not one-shotting me. So all I need to be able to do is tank them, and then I just don't have an option for huge one-shots at all.
Okay, so yeah, I understand the point of view from that one. The main thing is just we're going to have to be really careful with the balance to make sure that it isn't now just like 20% of investment of the way there. Now you don't get one shot by them, so you just hold down whatever button on the boss or whatever, and now you're leeching permanently and you're fine. That's the concern. So like, if it is a like universal. Okay, like for example, would it be okay that, I mean, look, the corridor, let's use that as the example. So the corridor obviously has some like, okay, it's too hard to get, we need to probably improve the way the lanes spawn such that you don't get into that situation where like, there's literally impossible for me to run there unless I have X or Y. There is the thing where like, okay, for example, if like life regen wasn't regulated, like, do you really think any player in the game, like this is, I'm not saying this is wrong or right, should just be able to AFK in that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so definitely I prefer that over watching people one-shot bosses, 100%, with enough investment.
Well, no, we won't disagree, but just I'm just curious, do you actually think it should be okay, able to...
Yeah, I'm not entirely against something just being a straight up one-shot, like failing the memory game, for example, in POE 1. Like, I'm not inherently against that, but I do think the current ones are a little bit like too fast to be those one-shots.
Yeah, I agree. I just think there is 2 problems here, which I'm interested in. One is mechanics feeling fair, which there are things here that are unfair, and that is bad, and they need changing, and I will get that adjusted today. And I'll get that on live as soon as I can, which might even also be today. The other thing would be that the bigger thing, which is that investing in defense is not allowing you to mitigate it. So different from the corridor skill. There's just like whether or not investing in defense enough, it gives you enough defense against things in general, against the bosses, which maybe isn't the case. It might be that yes, investing in defense needs to be more advantageous right now for sure. And like, don't get me wrong, there's nothing more, and I've spoken about this before in the past, there's nothing more demoralizing than putting hundreds of hours into a boss and then it's just like deleted, and it's like, oh great, that's
but it's also demoralizing to just watch someone sit there and face tank it and just attack it with no, like, having to molly down to move. Like, that also,
especially without the gear.
Like, it's kind of it's almost a bit ridiculous to discuss like which of these 2 horrible outcomes is better. Like, like, surely the actual answer is like neither of them should be happening.
No, I agree. It's just that it's pretty rare that we've seen defense be there for the OP one. That's all, right? Like, we very often see offense.
Maybe it is, but like, I think that's probably also a lot around the fact that people like building glass cannons. Like, that is a thing people just like doing. And so, like, the amount of incentivization, and so then there's the issue of like Well, I mean, let me put it this way. Even if, right now, and I don't know whether this is the case or not, like it probably isn't, but even if defense was overtuned compared to damage, I think that you're still not going to incentivize people to do that until you get to the point where they're immortal. Like, I don't think getting 80% of the way to immortality is actually enough even for people to still not want to build glass cannons. And so you kind of got like that issue of like, it's just really, really hard to get that balance right. So that isn't to say that we won't try, but I'm just saying that like, it is people, there just tends to be an erring on the side of offense for that reason, and I don't think either immortality or insta-killing bosses is right. So, like, you know, the people probably concentrate on the damage more.
Yeah, especially, I mean, we have a bigger problem, especially with just in general, just thinking about it, like, damage also now resulting in crowd control amplifies the problem even further.
Yeah.
Because that, having the boss be heavy stunned and or frozen or whatever, like, majority of the fight is just even more of a reason to just go ballistic on damage. Yeah, there are problems here, 100%. I'm just thinking of random other things that.
Well, yeah, I have other questions about defense as well. So armor break, I would say like effectively disables armor, right, as a defense for hardcore. It's sort of like when it comes around, it kind of like shuts down your main form of defense. You're feeling like very tanky if you do invest into armor. Well, ideally, I do still armor needs a buff. But I guess the problem I have with armor break and Fizz overwhelm in PoE 1 is that it's just so crazy to me to have something effectively shut down your defense from time to time. So yeah, are you happy with armor break and Fizz overwhelm being in the game?
Well, in PoE 2 context, I'm not happy with the current state of monster armor break. No, that is also on my change today list. So I need to. There's a few things. It was meant to be that they're breaking flat amounts of armor, and that isn't. So the more you stack, the less significant the armor break becomes from the enemy. I suspect there might be some sources of percentage based in there, which are just like it disincentivizes. I mean, it just means that the more you have, the more you're relying on armor, the more punished it's going to be. So I just need to do a quick audit. There's not that many sources, thankfully, so it won't take long, and I just need to make sure that it's working. And then there are possibly cases where it is just doing too much, and yeah, it's just like. Yeah, it acts as an insane weakness, but yeah, I know 100% agreed it is not in the right spot, and also on the today list. So I need to make sure that we go back, get the community team to go back through this afterwards and make sure I don't forget about all these things. But no, that one I already have. There's that and the speed and a bunch of these other and Arbiter and there's a whole bunch of stuff here.
Yeah, we've gone over a lot already. Do you think in the short term we could see just like a straight up number buff to armor while you're trying to work out a long term solution?
Oh no, but I'm not talking about a long term solution for the armor break thing. I'm talking about it'll be solved.
No, I know, but like that's what I mean for armor too.
I see what you're saying. Sorry, misunderstood. Yeah, sure. I can't be able to immediately say that.
In order to change armor, we'd need to be able to understand why it's bad. And I don't think just changing the number right now is right for that.
Okay, that's fair.
Like, I don't think we've fully understood the issue.
We did a few things. Like, there was some overwhelm on some bosses, and we removed it. And there were too many skills converting too much into element. And I think we pushed back a lot of that. So, like, it obviously makes the armor more effective against those abilities. And, like, there's a lot more of that we probably need to reevaluate as well, just across the board.
Yeah.
But that stuff's really fast to change. It's well just a global number shift.
But that's an example right there of why just changing the number wouldn't have even helped, right? Like, if the problem is elemental damage, then making armor stronger wouldn't have done anything for that. So, like, it's so important to understand the reason before we just make changes.
Obviously, the danger there by moving more Fizz is it then makes it worse for non-armor builds as well, but that increases the power of armor differential to the others, and so there's, you've got to be careful with that. But well, maybe.
Because
maybe there's something we can do more imminently.
Anecdotally, I would definitely love more access to different forms of defense, and I know that is definitely an EA problem where just not everything is in yet. But just to like anecdotally running through my experience, I am a Smith of Kitava, so I have like the shared res and the shared max res. So I'm 89, 90, 90, and for a long time I was like 85, 86, 87, so very high alley res. And on top of that, I was wearing a
which means yes, currently moving more into Fizz is probably going to be to your detriment.
Yeah, sure. But even with that, and a Cloak of Flames, and I can't remember the name, Hollow something, but there's the unique helmet with like 15% Fizz reduction. Even with all of that mitigation, I was like, at the start of today's stream, I was very rough until I got my 4th lab. Like, I was able to like improve it a little bit, but it felt a little weird to me as a player that I've like, my entire ascendancy was defense based. I picked up every defense I could on the tree, and I was trying so hard to get really good gear too, and it was very rough on defense.
I mean, what I immediately probably will do after is I'm just going to grab your character, put it locally, and then just kind of have a look at that, just so I can get a better exact understanding. But like, sure,
I can give you a snapshot before I because now with regen it has been.
We have it all. Don't worry.
Perfect.
We can take anyone's character from live and just play with it. It's not a.
Perfect. Yeah. The regen did make a big difference, but I'm still seeing a lot of issues there. Another thing that has been brought up a lot, and I thought was a really good point, was we see chaos damage very early in PoE 2. In PoE 1, it was like generally something we'd see a lot later. Would you be open to considering something like the Chaos Soul Core being a rune instead, something that we can like get early? It's definitely a big part of what makes Viper so scary. Is it's almost impossible to get Chaos Res early on. Yeah.
It sounds like a sort of more of a hardcore related concern, because in standard you wouldn't like it's just balanced to be okay, but in hardcore where you're wanting to definitely not die, it's like a different concern. I don't think we would have thought about it in that way previously.
It is sort of a medium core concern, because like if you can't get past the boss, you're just stuck there.
Oh sure, but like I mean the damage like it's balanced assuming 0 chaos resist, right? So like
Viper's hard.
It is a hard fight. That's just a side note. separate. But like in terms of just the fact that it's chaos damage, I don't think is as relevant in standard play because like we're balanced assuming you have no chaos resistance, and so
what does she do that's chaos? Obviously, the big purple meteor storm that I want to make some changes to because it just creates too much mess on the ground. It's a little bit lacking clarity or that fairness. And then
the scare things, right? I'm assuming.
So the way it works is aside from poison itself dealing chaos damage, the only other things that are chaos damage are anything that is purple.
Yeah. Right.
So all of her green stabs and slashes, none of that is chaos, and none of it should be chaos.
It's physical hits, and then the poison. If it poisons you, then it is chaos damage. But because the poison damage is based on the hit, your armor effectively mitigates the chaos damage because it reduces the hit size.
Right.
Yeah.
So
the meteor thing is a problem, but it's like more of a fairness problem because ideally you should be able to dodge that pretty reliably every time. Right now, it's a bit of a mess.
It is hard to dodge that.
Yes, but aside from that, it would only be the poison of which, yes, your other defenses would, armor in particular, invasion would mitigate.
Right.
But yes, I do. It is the case, by the way, that if a thing like any snake spitter that's spitting at you with some green poison thing, that aside from the poison debuff, which I believe you said kind of wasn't that dangerous earlier in general, and maybe there are certain cases where it is.
It's definitely dangerous if you're playing an evasion character. Like that poison feels lethal, and that's one thing the armor didn't.
The hit is never chaos damage, just to be clear. Which in POE 1 it is. It's like half chaos, half fizz.
Yeah. No, I did not know that. I fully thought the spears from the side, which a lot of people say is the most dangerous attack. I thought that was chaos because it's very heavy.
Just fizz.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
That's probably just more of a Viper is too hard problem.
Right. Makes sense. I wanted to ask you a little bit about.
I don't think Viper's too hard. I think it's fine. I mean, I don't play hardcore, but I don't think it's too hard. I like the fight.
It's very hard. I wanted to ask you a little bit about pushing. As a player, I experience that sometimes, it almost seems like desync to me, if I'm being frank. Is there an option to have more source of push resistance? Something, for example, like the more strength the character has, or wearing heavy armor. It does seem a little silly to a lot of people that like people maybe have 300, 500 strength, or they're wearing like full plate, but like a lot of monsters are just pushing you around very easily.
It doesn't currently exist as a concept of mitigating it, because it was meant to be more of a physical thing of, well, there's two things. There's like monsters pushing you because you literally cannot occupy the same space as them.
So here, are we talking right now about monster charge abilities, or are we talking about like a sword swing?
The number one thing that has been noticeable for me is that like little, I think it's called an antline maybe or something. It's like the little like yellow beast that like rolls on you. That still does take you for a ride.
Sure. Well, in that case, it's probably just a matter of fixing that particular thing. Like, I suspect that the answer to this one is not we need a mitigation really. It's more just like we just need to look at places that are, like just monsters that are bad and just fix them individually.
There are certain things I wanted to do, like I wanted it to be, and there were technical limitations here that we need to reevaluate, but I wanted it to be when you were blocking or parrying and you got hit, you got knocked less back because you technically did deflect them.
Right.
In the parry case in particular. And
in some cases, there's just push direction. Like maybe the antline is not pushing you side with that thing.
The charges and things taking you a ride has been like honestly the bane of my year.
That's just that's more of a just specific setup of specific monsters and stuff like that. Like, did we fix what's his name, the lumberjack guy?
In theory, but it seems to regress.
It still happens sometimes.
It seems to just break every...
I don't think this is a like balance question. I think it's just a technical like we just need to fix some places and.
I just wonder.
There is also some desync we need to fix.
There's also that.
Annoying.
Yeah. Is pushing something you would consider temporarily removing until you have fixed the issue?
Not at all. No. It will make the game feel like dog shit if we do that. Like, there's just lots of things that you need to have. You need to have some pushing in order to make work. Like, I think it's more just specific monsters.
Right. Okay. Okay. I'm not 100% sure I agree with that, but we'll move on.
That's because you haven't seen it without it. Like,
That's fair. That's true.
If we turned on all sources of pushing, it would be a disaster.
Right. Okay. So during early access, we talked about like respec and lowering respec costs and stuff, and I wanted to bring up the point that a lot of players are using a large amount of their gold on gambling, because a lot of people are falling behind or feeling.
Bro, that's all I use my gold on.
Behind on gear. So I wonder if you would consider further lowering costs and even like reopen the conversation on ascendancy respec during early access, especially since you've been talking about that you are going to be buffing things. So let's say somebody's like, oh wow, Flame Blast looks really cool. I would love to be able to try that, but maybe redoing the entire campaign again, which could be over 20 hours for a lot of people, feels very prohibitive.
I do find it to be, maybe not. Oh, I do find it to be very fucking cheap right now. Is the thing.
Exactly. I can't say personally I've run into that as a problem. Like, I'll respec my character all the time. I don't even think twice about it. Like, it's not.
Again, Jonathan, stop taking it personal, bro. You're talking about just you. You can't look at it from just your set of lenses, man.
Been a concern, really?
I guess it depends how much you gamble or not.
It probably does.
At that point, yeah, but even like, I'm saying even if you're just like early, so I don't think it takes that long to actually do a pretty substantial risk.
I have to admit that I haven't been gambling in my playthroughs, really. Like, I was, like, probably about 6 months ago I was doing that all the time, and I just haven't really been doing it.
When we did the, like, gold model and respec costs, we had assumptions of, like, here's how much people will spend on vendors, and here's how much, and there's probably, like, those assumptions assume a perfect world of that person exactly doing that thing, and so, yes, if anyone was to stray from that assumption, then now I'm not going to be able to afford one thing over the other.
What I'm actually hearing right now, by the way, from this and an earlier conversation we had, is that I need to not I need to do some disenchantless runs because apparently I'm not testing something that players are actually doing. Like my runs are entirely like I disenchant every rare on my runs generally, and so if that's a different behavior, then I need to test that and see what the experience is like. Because like the whole like there's not enough currency thing, there's not like stuff like that, and like and if you're telling me that you're like selling your rares and buying gambling all the time, and then you're also saying you don't have gold for respecs, it's like, well, this is just like a materially different playstyle that I'm not currently testing myself.
Right.
So like I think that's what I need to do to see what's going on with that.
And with the last point I made, would you, especially with the fact that there are going to be buffs coming during this, would you?
I don't think that anything changes between early access and not early access regard. By the way, like I think that if the argument is that it should I think the argument is the same regardless whether it's early access. Like, I don't think the early access is a part of this decision regardless. It's just what is the price supposed to be? We should get it correctly.
Well, sure, but I'm talking about
otherwise
ascendancy respec was what I wanted to.
Yeah, otherwise
sure.
it depends a little bit on the severity of the change. But like it depends partly also on just how much we change. Without knowing the how big those changes are, because I need to get in there and actually do them first and then make that decision really. Like there are certainly options there. It is important to me to make sure that I understand exactly where I sit on the ascendancy class respec thing, because the moment that's turned on, it ain't going back. So that is blocked by me, and I will take whatever is necessary on that one. I understand it.
Well,
it is more.
Can I ask you a
I will
question
have a
about it
Sure.
then? Do you feel like it is absolutely necessary to have those both be permanent choices, because you already do have the character class itself be a permanent choice, right?
Oh no, and I'm like, I do understand. Do be clear, I am on the fence about this. Like, I can't say that like I'm like, oh, I can't believe POE 1 has ascendancy class respecting. Like, I'm all for that as well. It's just I'm also for the more permanent decision. I'm just like, I need to find the variable that makes me be able to, or the articulation to be able to go one way or the other. And it's very easy to just fold on that. Like, very easy. It'd be very easy to just be like, we're going to change it right now. But it's not, when you have the things that you can't come back from, like, you definitely want to be certain to some degree. There are some other staff that share the same sentiment as me, and I might just go and have a bigger discussion and actually figure that out. And like, it is true, it's not really fair to make people have to wait for that decision on my behalf. I kind of was like, look, by release, post early access, you will have that decision one way or the other, and that will be the way it is. But yeah, fair enough. If the argument is like, if it's going to come up every single time, which is fair, people care about it, then I probably need to press the decision sooner than later. So I'll just get that answer sooner and not have people wait so long. Hopefully, for everyone's sake, it's the answer you want. But if it isn't, well, you might just have to deal with it.
That's fair. That's fair. I think I was curious about, like, so you went with the decision to keep that Energy Shield does not get bled, which is sort of like giving monsters a form to be immune, right? Like, it feels very similar to like a monster.
I don't think that we've actually come to a decision on this really. Like there wasn't like I think after the last time this was discussed, we never actually went back and talked about it. So I wouldn't say we've decided that. It's more just that it just went in like that because we didn't get another chance to talk about it. So I don't know that we have a real answer as to what we want to do with that yet.
Okay.
Like we will revisit that.
I personally am just all for changing it, to be honest.
Okay, well, sure. Then I mean, I have no objection to that.
We made the decision a while back. Like, I don't see why it can't.
Yeah.
I did want to bring up, if you do make it like that on players too, remember to put bleed immune on CI.
Yeah. We will definitely change CI, but it is a thing that the players are now going to have to deal with who aren't CI, just as a note, as a thing that will happen.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that bleed is exactly breaking the bank right now, is it? Or it was for a while. There was a period there where like bleed was just brutal. Like what changed to make that not the case? Like I'm talking pre-release. Could you remember when the freaking like prowlers and D1 forward bleed you?
We had bleed on a lot more things, and then there were some crazy damage multipliers on it. Some that I can't remember why they were, but I mean, again, pre-release numbers, things.
Cool.
Which was also unfun, by the way.
I'm just saying, like, I don't remember what happened.
Yeah. I have a question about Ignite Prolif, specifically with the monsters needing to stand still for, or like needing to be near the source for 2 seconds to be able to proliferate.
It probably needs to be
it's on the today list. It was actually on my yesterday list, and I didn't quite get to it, so it sucks.
I know we've had a lot of heavy questions, but I have a bit of a lighter question for myself. Like, how are you feeling about the current like Blessed Orb and Divine Orb being bundled together?
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, is there anything?
I'd say I don't have a feeling one way or the other, really. It's just, how do you feel about it?
I definitely, I don't know if this is just a PoE 1 player thing, but I definitely feel like it's missing. Because like, I would never divine an item. Like, because the divine it's a big investment, right? Like, we use it a lot when like uniques or like when a main weapon is like in need of it. But
like, are you saying that you believe that this is reducing the desire to actually use divines?
It's just that I would never use it for just an implicit on an item. So it just makes an item feel like pretty much permanently worse than what it should be, I guess, is like my personal anecdotal feeling as a player.
I mean, is that partly also just because the ranges and or power of an implicit is just too weak as well?
Yeah, potentially.
They're not exactly impactful in most regards. Some are good. Some are very good.
I can't say this is something we've really thought about.
Yeah.
So
it's
just
a thing that kind of happened, and then like we honestly just went under the radar the whole time. So
yeah,
if there are more opinions on that, I'd be like really happy to hear them.
Yep. It was just something I was curious about, so I figured I'd bring it up. The next thing is about movement speed. In PoE 1, we have a lot more things like Whirling Blades, Frostblink, etc. And in PoE 1, I feel like it's a bit more viable to completely forego movement speed on boots and go for like triple energy shield. But obviously, movement abilities aren't in the same spot in PoE 2. Is there ever a world where you either like think about like removing the hidden movement reductions on shield and armor, give like a implicit movement speed to boots or something like that, so they scale a little bit with like the higher bases?
Well, I mean, are you just saying here just make movement speed on the player faster?
So, for example, like one idea that I saw was if you, let's say that some bases have 5, 10, and 15 movement speed, so like that the higher bases are slightly better, and maybe even like scale less, right? So that some of your movement speed is guaranteed, or make it like a lot easier to roll movement speed, like increase the weight that it can roll.
Well, I don't necessarily think it's bad to have a base type that where you've got a mod that, you know, that's somewhat mandatory. Like, that's okay. But it sounds like, but if you're...
But as a player, it just...
If honestly, because the thing is, in PoE 1, are there really people going around? Like, surely it isn't common that people don't have movement speed on their boots in PoE 1. I guess it's technically viable if you just... You reckon?
Yeah, quite a lot of like triple energy shield boots and stuff. No, especially different in PoE 1 because we have the influence things.
Right.
Again, seasoned players, not like...
Right.
Yeah, not new players, sure.
Random.
But it is an option, and it isn't really in PoE 2. Like, movement speed is a lot more mandatory.
I mean... I don't know. To me, like, I mean, sure, I do not disagree with the fact that there can be scenarios in PoE 1 where that's not the case, but I would still say it's basically mandatory there for them. Like, for most of your PoE playing career, I would say that you're going to be wanting to get movement speed on your boots. You know?
I would even argue, like, the single best boot in PoE 1, which is the Rallycash and Patience, they don't have movement speed on them, and like they're still considered like pretty much the best boot.
Right. But I mean, isn't it fundamentally then just back to the question of like, you want to move faster?
Yeah, for sure. It is.
Sure. So I mean, I guess that would be so really it's
what we want. Move faster implicitly unless dependency on mod, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, whether or not it's implicit or based on the mod or anything, it's just I want to move faster, right? Like, it feels like that's really the core.
Which comes back to we need to have those discussions. And
right.
Yeah.
It's similar.
A difference in PoE 2 is that the implicits of uniques, especially things like Life Sprig, will scale into the endgame. Where, like, if I find a Life Sprig on my level 80 character now, it's never going to be usable early game. But the explicits on Life Sprig, and a lot of other caster uniques and things like that, they don't scale either. So... have you explored the idea of the actual explicit scaling or the implicit not scaling so that you can find these like twink leveling uniques? Like, what are your thoughts around the uniques there?
I don't think we would want uniques to have the explicit scale like that. That's kind of not what uniques are about.
Yeah.
So it's not that is not a particular solution.
The bigger question is about whether or not the implicit, the skill should or shouldn't level up with the item.
Well,
I mean, it currently does, right?
It does.
Yeah, it does. But something that could be interesting is that if you find a Life Sprig on a lady character, it can scale up to that level, so it would scale with your character. That would make it feel really good as a leveling item, for example. That you can use it at level 1, you hit level 3.
I really don't like that kind of thing, the whole like item that just scales with your character. Like, I don't think that we want to move in a direction where you'll have less times when you put items on your character as you level up. Like, that doesn't feel like the right direction to me.
But there's also more and there's a second part to that, which is whether or not Life Sprig should even have high level requirements ever. Which is a more, I think that's come up a bit.
That's
more,
a separate question. That it's come up. I'm kind of not quite sure about that one at the moment.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, there'll be more discussion.
I mean, so one thing that was proposed and as a potential solution to this is that just the like, I feel like maybe you didn't like this, or I can't remember who didn't like this. Someone didn't like this. Because I proposed that we make it so that the implicit skill on uniques has like a cap level, but then that does level up as you go through the game. Like, not so it's not that it levels up. It's that like it is capped to the level of where you are.
Yeah.
So that way, even if you get a level 80 Life Sprig, you can still equip it at low levels, and then and then that will go with you effectively. And somehow I see that as different from like your items changing as you level up. That to me, that's not like quite the same thing. So like that would potentially be an option. I don't remember why there was some reason why we didn't do that, but like it might still be on the cards.
That's fair.
Wait, so you're saying if you find it at level 80,
so if you find it at level 80. 16 skill, but you can still equip it. It doesn't change the level requirement, but then the skill gets down leveled to the maximum that it can be for the.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
I thought that's what he's proposed just a second ago. But
no, he's talking about the explicit scale.
No, there's a second thing there.
The second one was that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Maybe I misunderstood then. Okay, right. So in that case, then sure. Like,
I mean, I would personally prefer to just be like, you can drop a low level Life Sprig and that you use a low.
Yeah, but I don't love that either, honestly.
But I don't hate that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's a part of me that also kind of likes the idea that there were some uniques that were more valuable to find at lower levels, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I don't know whether players actually like that or not.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that.
So that's just kind of like a random other thing.
That's fair.
But
I don't hate that.
Yeah, I was just curious because we do find them a lot. Another question is about the minion resurrect timer. It keeps resetting like the entire timer every time a monster dies, and that can feel very frustrating. So I wondered, how do you feel about that? That the entire timer resets?
Well, if you don't have that, it feels a lot more frustrating. Let me tell you. Like that was how it was until we changed it, and like it was so bad. Because what happens is that like the monsters, that your minions just die one at a time, and then they can never really accomplish anything. And it's just like trust me, that was a buff. That change, like that was a massive improvement. So yeah, like until you experience it the other way, you will understand if you play it the other way.
There might be an intermediary there. I want to explore some options.
Well,
for example, like, instead of resetting the entire timer, it adds to the timer based on like the cost of the minion or something like that. We might do something like that.
But I don't know. But that's not going to fix the fundamental issue, which is that minions work best when there's lots of minions. And so the issue that we had was that you just get into a situation where they just trickle in and die one at a time.
No matter what, they have to revive all at the same time.
That has to happen. Yes.
I'm just saying it could be that like, okay, let's say everyone's dead but one.
Right. So it increases but not as much.
And so instead of like, all about to revive except for one, he died.
Yeah,
and
that actually is viable, and that maybe is a change we can make.
And like, would you ever be open to adding a keystone that changes the behavior?
I was actually thinking about that earlier today, and I mostly, as like the troll in me, was like, we should do this just so the players can see how bad it is.
Yeah.
but yeah, that was probably a negative thought I shouldn't be having.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think a lot of people would like to see it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I think the thing Mark just said is much more reasonable, and so we should probably do something with that. Yeah.
Convocation, is that something on the table? It's like maybe a spirit skill or something?
I don't love it.
That's fair.
I don't love it.
I'm kind of like, I could see a world where reservation cooldown, or you have to earn it, or something like that.
If to go in, it would have to be different enough that players probably wouldn't see it as convocation anymore. Like, I suspect that's kind of the reality. Like, like as Mike said, you have to add some kind of conditions, or you have to do something, and it's like at that point, it's not even doing the thing the players want it for anyway. So it's like, you know, like
that being said, it might still just be better, and there might be some room for it.
I don't love it.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't love it. I would much rather find a better solution to that issue.
Okay. When it comes to map completion, obviously there's been some changes this patch, but one thing that easily feels the worst is when there is one monster just like really far away, and the checkpoint system doesn't really cut it there. Would you consider making the completion of a map be like 90% of the rares instead of 100? Because the bad feeling is very often tied to just one monster, the other side of the map, and I have to like do so much backtracking.
Sure. Well, I want to solve this problem. I don't know that that's the answer, but I understand the issue. Like,
we straight up discussed last night that like just having the minimap icons on.
There was a discussion of icons on all the time, right? Because you're not going to miss the monsters if you see them.
The main reason for that is like the current way it works is it's like when 200 remaining they appear, and on some maps that's like you kill 3 packs and they appear, and other maps it's like you got to clear 80% of it before they appear. And honestly, that's kind of weird and bad anyway.
Yeah, it's just that we kind of want to like the main thing we're worried about with that change is the whole you just play on the minimap, like you're not even looking into the game.
But I think that fear.
I'm very in favor of that.
Well,
I love
like,
playing
do we just turn off.
Literally just showing from the start. Like I love that initially for sure. At least for me.
So I thought you said you loved the idea of not looking at the game and only playing off the minimap.
I kind of do that anyway.
One of the like when we were trying to find that in Vid Crash, the one of our developers like tried playing with just the graphics turned off, like they just had the minimap and they played literally to the end of Act 2 with just no graphics, and they're like, and the funny thing was like, what the hell? How did you even manage to get through 2 acts like that? And he's like, oh, Huntress OP. I was like, okay, like so it is actually possible to play entirely with the minimap, no graphics at all, apparently.
Yeah, that's fun. No, I love that.
I want to change that imminently. The thing with the 90% thing you're suggesting, by the way, there is like, let's say the map only has 3 rares. Is it just 2 out of 3?
Sure.
Does it like round down? Does it round up? If there's only 2 rares, is it literally just one?
Just enable seeing the rares on the
I agree.
Probably
I like that.
I agree.
I like that. Another quick question about Delirium. It seems very fast. Obviously, we're a bit slower now. Any thoughts on Delirium speed?
I very specifically made a number of builds and tested them just before this 020 release, and I was actually surprised how well I was doing. And I was like, okay, like I thought this was a big problem, and I was like, I'll just actually go and actually test it myself. So it could be like, okay, I'd like to know a bit more here, I guess, which is like, is it certain maps over others?
Yeah, 100%. Like, because it's still expensive like donut, right?
Yeah, which we do, and we do kind of have to balance it around probably the bottom. Maybe it's sure. There's probably a point where it's balanced around an assumption of like being more acceptable maps instead of the worst ones, and so I just need to shift that assumption and then change it. But yeah, I did specifically personally test this on a number of characters pre-020, and I was actually I was like, I expected it to be way worse than it was. That being said, I wasn't using like a massive range of maps for testing that. I was like, probably 5 or 6 different things on many different characters. So yeah, sure, I will look at that as well. I add it to the today list. It's going to be a big day.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys doing this. So obviously, POE, you're not necessarily tied to like the warrior being melee, right? Like right now I'm playing artillery ballista. Would it be possible to implement some sort of favorite system that I can just tick like artillery ballista with a little heart on it? So then when I go to like level up those gems, I don't have to in the bottom left search artillery ballista. And
I would suggest just having a tab for equipped gems would be the way to do that.
Yeah,
like you just have a tab that just shows you the equipped gems. You just click on them and you level up that way.
Yeah, so all the classes. Then
Bro, that would be beautiful. That would be fucking fantastic, bro. Like similar to the D4 loadout system or something.
My gems and then all gems is probably what it should be. Yeah.
Another question. The Smith's hammer ability. I was watching. I have not used it myself, but I saw Quinn69 using it, and it looked pretty painful with like a little like tink, tink, and then going out and hitting twice. Any improvements to that?
So there were meant to be some changes that were made to this that I even specifically spoke about. I think with maybe Darth and Gazzy or whatever when we had that last one. Yeah. And those changes didn't occur. They have occurred locally. They should be in an imminent patch coming out. Awesome. Like that's it somehow got missed. I think, or I don't know. I actually don't know what happened there, but that was a sheer mistake. Straight up.
All good. So there are multiple skills that can use chargers. A few players have reported that like they might want to use chargers on a specific skill. Would there be a way to like deactivate that a skill uses chargers, but you still want to use that skill, but you don't want it to be empowered?
This was something that came up like probably about 3 or 4 days before we shipped. Actually, the obvious case is barrage on the Huntress, right?
Yeah.
like whether or not you want to do that. So I think like I'd have to look into whether or not it's going to be okay, but we could have a support gem that does that like give some other power boost but says it can't consume charges or something, and then that way you could use that with barrage if you wanted to disable it for that or something like that. So I think that'd probably be the way. But I have to think about exactly what that should be, but something along those lines would be the way.
Should work.
Yeah. I have a little like just interesting question about how do you feel like class identity revolves more around weapons, right? Because like I'm a warrior build, but a lot of people inherently think like warrior is maces, but yeah, like the class identity is more around the weapons themselves. I'm just curious how you feel about that.
Well, we explicitly moved to having 12 classes partly because of that, like to make that the case. Like we want that, and this is actually was driven partly. I mean, so when we were talking about like adding weapon types and so on, there was this thing where we're like, okay, if you're, actually, you know what it actually was? Okay, so we had the spear base type. And we're like, okay, because this is like way back, like a long time ago. We're like, okay, what is going to make a person who selects a ranger ever switch to spears and do that? That's just incredibly unlikely to actually happen. It's like ultimately the purpose of the classes at the start are kind of to give you a stereotype to like to go to. Now you don't have to follow that obviously, like everything's open, but giving players like a thing where they're like, okay, like I know what I'm going to do, like I'm going to do this thing. It's like it's kind of important for new players to have that happen. So I think it is overall very positive and kind of like why we did that in the first place. And I mean, like evidence of that in POE 1 is like, yeah, players who select ranger, like even though there's all this whole thing about being able to become a melee ranger, like it takes a long time before someone would even experiment with that if they're a new player. Like they just wouldn't even cross their mind to like change weapon type like that once they've already started. So effectively just due to that, we needed to have some way to make it so that from the very beginning you kind of know that you've got some idea in your head about what kind of thing you're going to play.
Yeah. The next question is about corrupted items, and you added, in my opinion, a very fun new unique Stormbox. Actually, whoever made the Venture Stormbox, chef's kiss, love that thing. Please put it in POE 1 as well. Coolest thing ever. But I find corrupted items a little frustrating too, due to quality and sockets. I don't know if the answer is just like that they always have quality and sockets, but obviously it's items that we can't recombinate anyway. And I just want to hear your thoughts on a balance pass from that. It's very frustrating to get a really cool unique that is or rare that is effectively useless.
Yeah, something needs to change there. Like it ain't.
We actually removed some corrupted drops before O2O went out, and then because we were like, wait, hold on, getting corrupted items just sucks. Yeah. Like this isn't a good thing you want. So like corrupting an item of your choice is great.
Yeah.
So we just straight up were like, we need to just start removing the corrupted drops and find a different way or a different item mechanic or do something with them.
Cool.
This 100% just like what is this random white corrupted item on the ground? Like that is never going to be of use to anyone.
Right. Yeah.
We just need to fix that for sure.
Cool. Is there a possibility of the runes being added to the currency stash tab?
I believe we would. So what was
we're adding a socketables affinity.
Yeah.
We're adding a bunch of affinities. I think it's like socketables, fragments, which will include tablets.
Yeah.
And obviously fragments. Breach and or catalysts.
Cool.
Expedition and thus also logbooks and the currency. We're adding a whole bunch of them. I think there's 5, 6, 7 maybe different affinities that we're meant to be adding within I would expect to see that within a week probably is my like guess. We're not going to add this is like currently it has the whole you have to have the stash tab in order to have the affinity, and we're like having to divorce that a little bit so that we can just have the affinities because the tabs take longer to make. And so that we're doing that work currently, and I would expect to have all of that. So you can use your premium quads, whatever, to stash all of those.
Cool. Actually almost through with all my questions here. So this isn't something, sadly, that I've been able to interact too much with, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the recombinators anyway, and just see if you guys have looked into the data a little bit. Obviously, I've seen a clip of, for example, Karn having like the 0.91 chance to recombinate. What do you guys think of recombinator use this early, basically?
I don't think we've even had enough real.
That's right. Waiting for more info and data there for sure.
Yeah.
I did worry that there'd be that people would start seeing those very low values because they're using extremely rare item modifiers or numbers of mods and getting like, oh my god, it says less than 1% or less than 2. This whole system sucks.
There was a real like. It's interesting because like with recombinators, I feel like every time we've ever even looked at them, they've always got this thing of like this tension between like they're so OP and yet also they look so underpowered. Like when they've got this like horrible tension like that. However, what I do think that this system is compared to the previous one is so much better is that if you're using them for the like low number of mod cases, then like you can get relatively good weight like weights. But we do have the ability to do more specific balance here if we want to. So like we'll just adjust. Like honestly, I have to admit like I haven't even recombinated anything on live myself yet. So it's just not it's not I can't really say anything about.
Yeah, that's fair. It's something I haven't.
Like I just don't know how it feels enough.
There were 2 major item systems that I was like expecting to get a bunch of feedback on and then would calibrate. One was recombinating, and the other, which I am very thoroughly looking for, and maybe you have some opinions on it, is how the new map drop progression works. And I know there is there's one thing I changed last night, which is to make it a bit easier to get guaranteed maps from the fixed last rare and last final boss. But the other thing is there is currently a bug which I saw, which is sometimes the boss's drop isn't +1 level, which I don't know how that happens, but I saw that bug. But assuming those are fixed, I am very curious to know and kind of just get people's feeling on that. I've seen some people get through the tiers very, very quickly, which is fine because they have proven that they can, and that's fine, and they weren't at the whims of the RNG as much. But I'm looking for a lot of feedback on that, and I'm hoping to start getting a bit more of that as people get into endgame.
anecdotally heard people telling me that they're happier with how in-game is now than how it was in 0.1.
I have also heard that from, but
Yeah,
again, very anecdotally. So
especially when it comes to sustain, I'm the wrong person to ask because I was shocked at one of the previous podcasts when people were saying they were struggling with sustain. So I thought it was funny when you basically said skill
Well,
issues.
that was
Yeah.
also the case for us, which is why we
Yes,
changed it.
that's why we just were like,
so
let's
I'm-
fully redo
Yeah,
this.
so I'm the wrong
What is
person to ask
good?
for about sustain, and obviously there's no issues for me with sustain now. I've talked to my community a little about this, and it was pretty split with the new like how you unlock Atlas points. A lot of people didn't like it. I personally like it a lot more. I had a strong dislike for the do 10 tier 1 maps, do 10 tier 2 maps. So I love the new way, but a lot of people in my community didn't. So you're definitely gonna have to get more feedback there. I'm just not 100% sure.
Okay.
I think the issue that
this-
people in my chat were saying was that they were struggling to see the corruption. So maybe even like some sort of indicator of like not an arrow, but like more.
When you
readily
say
find-
C, do you mean in the, like out of the fog of war or in the fog of war?
both, I guess, like just like, do you know the way we have the beams towards the pillars right now? I guess people
that's
want
why I'm
like,
asking. Like, are you saying just like physically you don't see them when they're
We,
revealed? Or?
just before the patch went out, we were like, we actually did go, do we want these to be visible in Fog of War or not?
Yeah.
And they were, by the way. And then we were like, I think maybe actually we don't, because you're going to spend too much of your playtime just looking in Fog of War, and I want you to be
Right.
looking in the revealed section more. And so that's why I did change it. So there's some things are in Fog of War, but it's like not that many. So towers and citadels being that. And then
You could have like a very short distance, maybe. Or
yeah, so
something like that,
but
just slightly
we don't
increase it,
currently have a
Yeah.
distance in Fog of War. You can see it's just either it is or
Right.
it isn't. And so maybe we can mess with that and have it be like, you can see
Makes
like
sense.
you know some depth in or something like that just to make it a bit better. But
Yeah. but
I mean,
at
it's
least
good
for
feedback.
myself, I
It's
like
good to
it.
know.
Yeah.
So that's about the Atlas points. If you do get any more, and of course, if you happen to get a collective from your community
Yeah.
in particular as well, and of course, people are going to post it. You have my Discord as well. Just tell me, because I'm very, very
Yeah.
curious about the map drops and how people feel about now that it's like way more deterministic for both sustaining and going up the tiers.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, not a huge amount of people collectively as in the end game, but like it's enough to start getting stuff. So
Yeah.
I'd really, really, really like to make sure we got that right. So if any of that comes up, just give me a yell.
I have one last question about POE 2, and then I have a few quick fire questions about POE 1, and then we're done. How do you feel about the removal of player speed, things like Herald of Ice, but then sort of...
Okay, guys, I'm not going to stick around for the POE 1 stuff. I personally could care less about that. I'm a POE 2 guy now, so just FYI.
adding it back in with effectively a few players are telling me the Lightning Strike and Aroa effectively just swaps it from Herald of Ice to the Roa and the Lightning Strike.
Well, lightning.
I don't know whether or not the balance of those is correct, quite frankly.
It's not quite like there's probably misbalance here, 100%, but it's not quite the same as what the Heralds were doing.
Yeah.
But it is still a balance anomaly for sure. Like I certainly have people playing. I know people who are playing Lightning Archers right now, and they're like, "Why am I suffering like this? I'm going to swap to Lightning Spear," which I assume is what you meant.
Yeah, Root 2 made me promise to ask that.
Yeah, so look, it's pretty clear. It is the number one play build right now is Lightning Spear Amazon, and for good reason, right? Like, it wasn't to the intention to be like we removed this thing and added this thing. That isn't intentional. That it ends up playing that strongly and that powerfully, and it's like a clear like, I mean, just use it in whole screen implodes,
Yeah.
right?
But the trouble we have now is, like, you know, this is what people are doing now.
Yeah.
And we nerf that. Like, you know,
No,
like,
that's fair.
The answer is usually that we can't very easily.
That's fair.
So, you know.
Yep. So a few POE1 questions and then nothing. Do we have a rough estimate at all?
Okay, guys, if you made it this long, thank you so much. If you would consider subscribing to the channel if you're new here, hit that bell to get notifications. To everybody else, thanks for checking us out, dude. Thanks for watching the video with me. Very constructive. One thing I can say is that these guys love their game, and so I think we are in good hands. So this is HOTTCHIPZZ signing off, everybody. Thanks a lot. You guys stay safe.